No, don't let David in. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Select Board Tuesday, March 12th hybrid meeting. I'm going to quickly read the agenda. We begin with the community input, appointments and resignations. Then we'll talk about Center Park picnic table. We'll have an audit presentation, Conservation Commission joint meeting. And then we will be discussing the fiscal year 25 budget and the town meeting review. We have a TA report, minutes and warrants, liaison reports, and another opportunity for community input. Before we start community input, last meeting we had some issues when we recognized some citizens who wished to contribute to the community input. And while Carlisle residency is not a requirement for offering input, we always do ask residents to identify themselves and to give their address. And I will continue to require non-residents to identify themselves and to provide their addresses before I allow them to speak. In addition, I will be eliminating, if in future a Carlisle resident wishes to speak and does not want to publicly disclose their address, and we've had some people that were worried that if they publicly disclose their addresses, they could be vulnerable to these gentle people. They may send me a brief note prior to each meeting indicating that information. So I'll be limiting all comments to 1 minute, regardless of whether those comments are coming from residents or other citizens. And I will encourage residents to submit their comments in writing to be included verbatim in the meeting minutes and to only summarize their input during this portion of the meeting. And so now I'm going to recognize anybody from either in the audience or online.
Do we need to call the meeting to order?
I just did.
You did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Is David's remote, and I didn't know if we
Yeah.
had to do anything relative to that?
We don't usually take a roll call.
We don't?
No.
Okay. All right.
We have a quorum right here at the table. So.
Perfect. Sorry.
Okay.
Here comes David, look at that.
And here's David. Great. And we don't expect Nathan to come. So I do know, I'd like to recognize resident Rebecca Vieira for community input. Her address and residency has already been verified.
Thank you, and sorry for the lighting. We are out of power here, so I'm doing my best. When I returned to Massachusetts after law school, I would drive to clear my head. I'd take random routes, then see if I could find my way back to Boston without a map or GPS. One day I wound through the woods and I saw BLM signs and pride flags on what seemed like every house or driveway. And later I learned that it may have been in response to a resident publishing some difficult letters into the mosquito. But it was on that drive that I fell in love with Carlisle and decided it's where I wanted to move eventually in my life. I love its spirit of openness and acceptance and resistance to hate. Since moving here, I've seen, some more of that occasional hate, but in each instance, this community gathers and stands in its face, and I now find myself raising one of those flags and saying that we are a town of love and will not turn to hate, no matter how loud and rude the voices come. My child will be proud of his Jewish heritage and queer family and know that Carlisle will hold the line against hate. I thank this board for its role in that. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, can you come to a microphone? Please identify yourself and your address. Thanks.
My name is Dr. Nouvelon. I live at 95 Hanover Road in Carlisle, Massachusetts. I come here today because I spoke to Kate Reed multiple times. I tried to speak to the chief of police, and I tried to have my attorney come with me to the meetings with the chief of police, but we got nowhere. Last weekend, I found a police officer trying to remove a worker from my property where I was cutting the dead wood and removing wood within 10 feet of the drainage. We have 3 feet of water in my backyard. We have water coming into the basement, and the drainage is not working. I spoke to Mr. Métivier. He said, fine, go ahead and do the work. So I put gravel and I put specific pipes for drainage so I could deviate the water from my house. I was met with hate, mobbing, assault, people who were calling me name, the C word, the B word, and threats to my life. I cannot live like that. I'm going tomorrow for a restraining order against these people. They are my neighbors, and they have brought in a bunch of other neighbors, and they have never met with me for 5 years. I've requested a meeting. My attorney requested a meeting, and to this day, we can't meet. And I met the hateful and anger and screaming every day. I got cornered on my home driveway. I can't get out of my house. I can't go anywhere. When I come in, I have to put some videos. I look at my phone and I look to see if they're hiding in the trees and the bushes, because there's a restraining order they got by lying, and they have to be 15 feet, or I have to be 15 feet away. That means I can't come into my driveway because they are waiting for me at the driveway. They actually install a video camera on Hanover Road that tells them at what time I'm coming in. They get the message on their app on their phone, and they meet me at my driveway, and they're always there. I can't live like that. I'm 63 years old. I went to the Council on Aging. I went to the state of Massachusetts protection against protection for the elderly. I went to the state police, and I got nowhere. So I'm hoping to get my restraining order tomorrow. I don't know if I will or not, but those people are not nice to me. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Mr. Hanover?
Thank you. Did you all get my email with an attachment
Yes.
that went out
We did.
the other night? Somebody's missing.
I was watching her and Jack Pepin, and it was great. It was just so great.
Thank you. On February 15th, I went to a COA
I'm sorry, you need to introduce yourself and give us your street.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Mike Hanauer, 200 Long Ridge Road.
And I am starting my timer. Okay.
On February 15th, I went to a COAHS luncheon that was at the Congregational Church here in town. At that luncheon, as they've done in previous times, they did religious ceremony and prayer before the meal. That seems to be a thing that the Congregational Church likes to do. I had previously talked to the minister there, and frankly, he wasn't interested in my concern. In fact, he changed the subject. At this point, I don't think this should be tolerated. These are secular events that we're having. The other two churches in town respect that totally, but the Congregational Church seems to want to do their evangelizing. I believe it must stop. I want to note that on the very back of the COA newsletter, you will note a statement with an arrow pointing to it that says the Carlisle Council on Aging and Human Services celebrates the diversity of our senior community and strives to embed inclusivity, dignity, and respect in all our services, programs, and advocacy. I believe that the town and the COA should live up to that mission statement. I want to see the town to take responsibility for this and go to the Congregational Church and say, that's unacceptable, will you refrain? And if they are on the fence or say no, they want to do that, then there are alternatives. But I don't believe that the town should disrespect our adults and our seniors with this kind of thing going on our public secular meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here for public input? Anybody online? Okay, seeing none. We're running a little behind on our schedule. We'll go to appointments and resignations.
Would you like me to make a
I
motion?
would love for you
Madam
to make
Chair?
a motion.
All right, I move to appoint Amanda Kern as a member of the Carlisle Cultural Council with a term to expire June 30th, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, I spoke to Mark Levitan, and apparently the Cultural Council have met her, and they're very pleased. So we'll have all those in favor? Any opposed? And just, that was unanimous, and Nathan is absent. Okay. Center Park picnic table.
I have a model. Oh, Allison Saylor, Stern Street.
Thank you.
I have a model and I want to show everybody. It's to scale, and it shows the proposed custom designed picnic table. So this would be the lawn shape with the Barney or the bed, the garden bed. You would approach from the parking lot and see it. And the cardboard that's brown underneath it would be wood chips for phase 1. And this is considered to be furniture, so it doesn't have to go to Historical Commission. And underneath, you can see that it's integral with the benches, and that is so that people don't steal it. But it will be also bolted together, and when it's time to possibly make a deck under here or stone or something more permanent, you could move it and put it back. So the material on the legs will be black locust, which is a bit like having pressure treated wood, but it's native, Massachusetts native tree. And the tops of the benches and the table will be red cedar. So this is an example of live edge red cedar. What the carpenter, who is Barry O's in Carlisle, will do is take the red cedar, smooth it out, and lay it, just as in the model, in 3 big pieces on the top and 1 for each bench, and epoxy it, and then UV polyurethane it to make it stable in the sun. And we've practiced this. We have the sawmill in Winchendon, Massachusetts that provides the wood. We have Barry O's, who's made some furniture using this technique already at Center Park. We have benches there. And at a public meeting last year, it was brought up as a request to have a picnic table at Center Park. The public input meeting is because I'm president of Friends of Center Park, and I represent the board, who our job is to work with the DPW. The DPW mows the lawn, we look after the fancy garden beds. And the way we do it on a volunteer basis is we run free classes. And so the benches have been part of our expanding the park to be more than just a lawn with flowers around the edge, to include woodland gardens. So we would like to, we are not the owners. As Friends of Center Park, we represent the select board, but for something as big as this, we need to get your permission. So again, just to recap, it's furniture, so it does not need Historical Commission approval. We did ask for ARPA funds for it.
I'm going to ask you to just sit and use the microphone for the rest of your presentation to make sure that people can hear you. Sorry.
The ARPA funds have been requested, and if we cannot get ARPA funds to fund this picnic table, we'll have to do fundraising. Are there any questions? you want to see the model? It's really cute.
Ryan, would you mind putting that back up on the screen, the,
Thank you.
I thought whatever she had up there before, whatever you had, wasn't it both, or?
It's a map.
Yeah.
Actually-
That one, yeah.
That one,
Oh, there's a
yeah.
model.
There's the model.
Okay. Here you go.
That's
I've seen it.
using,
And that's the one I wanted to look at, yeah.
so this cardboard that represents the green squares that are indicating where the picnic table will be, if you compare that space to the full lawn, it's 2%. So we're taking up 2% of the lawn to do this. And as I said, it's actually has twine from hay bales laid out there. You could go, anyone could go there and look at it. Jim Hall from DPW knows that it's there. He hasn't called me back to say it's going to be a problem. We think that it's plenty of room to mow around. Those 3 circle things are the big rocks that are in the lawn. So what we like about this design is that it's handicap accessible. Anyone in a wheelchair can just go straight through the main center pathway and go straight to the picnic table. And that's the section without any benches, so their wheelchair would come right up and be right at the level. It's ADA compliant level. So we like it. We think it's going to be lovely.
Any
Questions?
other questions?
So you're requesting ARPA? No,
No,
not requesting
she
ARPA.
has put in a request, but it's,
It's not been granted.
So ARPA said no, so then you're at fundraising, right? Are you asking our permission for fundraising?
just to move
Just
ahead with
bless it.
having this picnic table at Center Park.
In our budget?
Assuming, nope, just that they would raise the money privately.
Oh, so just the permission to have it if they raise the money?
Right.
It's a pretty big
got it.
piece of furniture for a group that are helping the town, but we're not the town.
And, yeah, because what's your estimate on the budget for this?
10,000.
10,000, yeah.
If you want to pass the model around, it's actually to scale, literally done on a 3D printer. So that is what it would look like. It's just you have to expand it up to being approximately 3 foot wide, like a picnic table typically is. And in a curve, it would be about 22 feet long. But that was in the picture.
Yeah, so Allison, I know I had the opportunity to hear more about this at your public meeting. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Here, go ahead.
Okay, at the, at your, public information meeting that you had recently. And I guess I just want to raise the same question that I raised then, which is, this seems like a pretty, even though I understand that it's not taking up a huge percentage of the lawn there, it seems like a very large picnic table, 23 feet long, when your average picnic table is what, maybe 6, 8 feet long? And I think it's wonderful that you have designed it in such a way that it can be handicapped accessible. I mean, I think that's a wonderful aspect of this. I do wonder, though, if it is, more than is sort of in keeping with the aesthetic of Center Park. And I know that, one other member, a resident who was in the meeting, sort of raised that same question. And again, I understand it'd be nice to have that be available for a variety of reasons. I'm just wondering what your thinking is about making it as large and sort of in a way almost massive as this is proposing.
Well, one of the things that we do at Center Park is we have events there that more than were in the past, and every Monday we have garden classes. I could see that we would use this every single time we have a class to lay out our stuff, to use and sit on the benches, to have a drink. I think it'll be used a lot. It's really probably about the size of 2.5 picnic tables joined together, and the curve is to help it to not be, if it was 22 feet all in a straight line, that would be difficult, but the curve actually provides stability as well as the custom look that we were going for. It took us a long time to come up with this design because you can't just have an ordinary picnic table at Center Park. It would be inappropriate. It's such a fancy park. And the benches that we have in the Woodland Gardens are beautiful and custom-made, and they're black walnut and red cedar. So this is what we came up with. This is what the board likes, and that's why I want people to go at any time. Right now, you can see this outline, which is designed for the DPW to be able to go around it. And yeah, so we like the size.
You finished? Okay. I'm going to recognize Mark. Could you identify yourself?
You're muted.
You're muted for some reason. Can't hear you.
Still muted.
Maybe it's on our end.
Give us a... He's on? Yeah, we see your mouth moving, but we can't hear you. Sorry. Okay.
Did he
You
get
want to
the
put your
question?
comment in the chat?
He did. He asked if CPA funds could be used for this.
Or if CPA funds could be. Have you tried at CPA?
I asked Ryan, and he said probably not going to work. So I didn't.
No,
do it.
it's, I can speak to that just as the chair of the CPC. Typically, CPC monies are spent on a project that fits into one of the 4 categories, and I'm trying to think about what it says around, this would be under recreation and open space. But just off the, yeah, I should look at it further, I guess, because we haven't ever, that I know of, entertained, using those funds for a specific piece of, in a sense, furniture, right? Something that's removable, right, rather than something permanent.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
But I can certainly
Any form
ask.
of fundraising would be wonderful. We can probably fundraise, I can imagine doing it at Friends of Center Park, half of it. I'm looking for matching funds.
Yeah. I'm going to say that when the Friends were, when we had the Center Park and we were trying to save it from just kind of going to seed, so to speak, and the Friends were started, it was with the proviso, we gave some money, like, I hate to keep on using these gardening, metaphors, seed money. But the idea was the Friends was going to take care of the park. And I would say that if the town were to spend anything on it, it would be for the plantings and not for furniture and for the maintenance of it, because that's where the rub was. So I would not support the town funding furniture for this.
Okay. So maybe I'm basically asking today is not, we will fundraise for it.
So then there might be some other discussion about, the design of it, but in that case, but if it's removable, I'm not as personally invested in that part, because they'll want to have a design that they feel they can fundraise on, and,
Yep.
If we get to phase 2 of the project, it would have a deck underneath it. This would be black locust decking. That's what we're going to ask for, and that would be permanent. But it can sit on wood chips for several years while we all get used to it and see how often it's used.
And how would that affect the maintenance of it then? Because wood chips, you can just mow right over, if the wheel of your mower goes over the wood chips. What
The
if
deck that we're proposing, we have a historical commission meeting where we're going to be talking about this on tomorrow, next week, I forget. It was supposed to be February and it got moved to March, but it's going to be exactly in line with the lawn. So the mower would go skipping over it. In fact, the dark line around here would be a mowing strip, perhaps even concrete, so that the mower would, I need to talk with Jim about it,
I was
but
going to say, that would want that to be
that
very
would,
carefully gone over with the people at DPW so that it's not causing them.
exactly. But we would have lived with it for how long as wood chips, so it'd be the same shape, and then we just have to question the materials. So that's mañana.
Okay.
Alex, if I had said or intimated that it wasn't CPA eligible, then I had made potentially a mistake, so I
Doesn't matter, it's okay.
don't remember saying that. I don't know that it wouldn't.
I was
Well, none of this.
pushed towards ARPA, and then ARPA didn't seem to work out, so.
CPA might be eligible, I just wanted to make
It
sure
might
that
still be
anyone's
eligible for CPA, and once you did some fundraising, that would be the time to go to CPA,
Okay, good advice.
I would say. But, talk to the Madam Chair over here.
Yeah, often it's helpful if coming forward with a project where you already have some funds committed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense? All right.
I guess the other thing I'd throw out there is if, that you could, that if you scaled it back a little bit, then it wouldn't be as expensive, and it might be easier therefore to raise the funds to cover the cost. So just food for thought.
Yep.
I understand that the garden, that the Friends are very, I know how much time you've spent thinking about this. I guess I want to say, though, that one of the things that's so hard to measure about Center Park is how many people use it, what is it that people like to use it for, and trying to understand as you're planning for the future, what, not just what the Friends, not just the vision that the Friends have, which is, it's, terrific and very detailed, and, I know how invested you all are, but also trying to find a way to get feedback from people in the community. Because again, I just worry a little bit from the few comments I've heard, and again, it's only been, one person a couple of different times. I think, the concern is it going more and more toward a fancy park that's not really as appropriate for a town like Carlisle as opposed to what you might have in a more urban area. So I'll just throw that out there for you to think about how you might get more input, feedback from people in town about what they would like to see there or how they use it.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on to our next,
Do I have permission to go ahead with fundraising and say that the select board approved that fundraising by Friends of Center Park?
you want to do a straw poll or have a motion?
You're looking at me.
Well,
You seem the most knowledgeable and the most,
yeah.
have
I
an
would-
opinion on it, whereas
Yeah.
I would point out that if, for some reason, it just didn't work out and what I think is going to be wonderful is horrible, we could move it.
You know what maybe the way to do this is to see what kind of response you get in terms of trying to raise funds for it. That'll tell us something about the community support.
Wouldn't it be harder, though, if,
if it's
doesn't Allison need to say the
select board.
select board? I
I'm
mean,
saying,
maybe we should give her permission to raise money.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with going forward to try to raise money for this particular project.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then let's see.
I don't think we need a motion for
Yeah.
that.
No, I didn't think so.
we're in agreement on
Yeah.
that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank you,
coming.
Allison.
Lose this this-
Don't forget your model.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Kelly, and would you like to come join us for the audit presentation?
Felt like I had to say something.
I don't know.
Kelly, please, would you join us?
Come on
Yes.
down.
Our wonderful town accountant.
Do you want to introduce me, or do you want me to just go for it? Okay, well, this is Zach Fentros. He was the lead on our financial statement audit this year. He's with Markham LLP, so they were a new audit firm for the town for the FY23 audit.
Thank you.
So again, my name is Zach Fentros. I was the audit director in charge of the town of Carlisle's 2023 audit. Tonight, I'm going to go over, take you through the financial statements, go over some account balances and some financial trends. And if at any point anybody has any questions, feel free to stop me and we can go over them at that time. Before we jump in, I think it's important to kind of have a takeaway or conclusion from my presentation here tonight. And I think the takeaway and the conclusion is that the town's in a good financial position. You have a good unassigned fund balance. You have a good, a well-funded OPEB trust fund. And you also had positive turnbacks on your budgetary versus actual for your general fund. So first, I'd like to turn to page 1, which is the first page after the table of contents.
And the wrong document here.
A little bit more, Ryan. There you go. This is the first page of the independent auditor's report. This is essentially what the town of Carlisle hired us to produce. The town did receive a clean opinion, which is the best opinion you can receive from an independent auditing firm, which again means there are no exceptions. So if I could have you turn to page 4, which is the first page of the management's discussion and analysis. And the management discussion analysis takes place on pages 4 through 11. Essentially, this is a narrative summary of the results of operations. So instead of just simply sitting here and reading this to you, I'd actually like to jump to page 12, and we'll discuss the same items that are discussed in the management discussion and analysis on page 12 and some of the further pages as well.
So we're going to page 12, you said?
11 and 12.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Current assets.
So tonight we're going to be looking at 2 balance sheets. And the difference between the 2 balance sheets is one is a long-term financial view for the town of Carlisle, and one is a short-term financial view for the town of Carlisle. This is the statement of net position, which is the long-term financial view for the town of Carlisle. As you can see, there's just one column of information here. So essentially what is done is the town's general fund, your special revenue funds, your stabilization funds, your capital project funds, and your trust funds are all consolidated together. And then the town's long-term assets and the town's long-term liabilities are included. So for this portion of the presentation, I want to focus on those long-term assets and those long-term liabilities. If you see maybe 2/3 of the way down the page, there's an item called capital assets. It's under non-current assets, and it's the last one. It's going to be your other capital assets net of accumulated depreciation. And that at a balance of $28,216,000. It's actually about a $537,000 decrease from the prior year. Now that decrease is due to your depreciation expense of $1.5 million, exceeding your current year additions of about $1 million. I'm going to highlight some of the current year additions that you had to your capital assets in fiscal year 23. The town spent $106,000 for new HVAC system at the library, $141,000 on 2 new dump trucks, $122,000 on 2 new police vehicles, and $445,000 on some new roads. Those are really the long-term assets for the town. If we could turn to page 13, we can go over some of the long-term liabilities. So this is really the second half of the statement of net position. The first page was all of your assets. Page 13 is going to be your liabilities as well as your fund balance. If you go maybe a third of the way down the page, you're going to see an item called non-current liabilities, and that's where we're going to focus our attention. The very first one is bonds payable net of current portion, and that had a balance of $10,234,000. It's actually about a $1.1 million decrease from the prior year. Now, this decrease is due to the principal payments that the town made on your outstanding debt in fiscal year 23. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is because your users of the financial statements, your bond rating agencies, like to see between 70 to 75% of debt paid off within 10 years. And as of June 30, 2023, the town of Carlisle is at actually 74% will be paid off within the next 10 years, which is a good financial position for the town of Carlisle to be in and will be viewed favorably by users of the financial statements, such as a bond rating agency. 2 line items right below that is the net pension liability, and that at a balance of $13,493,000. It's actually about a $4.7 million increase from the prior year, and I'll get into that increase here in a second. But what this represents is the town's portion of the total unfunded liability for the Middlesex County retirement system. Now, the reason for that, take a quick step back, it's important to note is that this liability is actually being presented as of December 31st, 2022. So be mindful of that when we're talking about the investment results. The reason for the increase in this liability is that the investment results for the Middlesex Contributory Retirement System came in less than what they anticipated, which led to an increase in your liability. It is not uncommon, or shouldn't be say not uncommon, it's not different from other communities in the Commonwealth. Most communities in the Commonwealth saw an increase in their net pension liability due to those poor investment results during calendar year 2022. What's important to note is that the Middlesex County retirement system is only at 52.6% funded, which is 5th lowest in the Commonwealth. And what we see on average for funding in the Commonwealth is around 75%.
Zach, what number are we, 53?
You're at 52.61,
52.61, and the average is 73.
75.
And you said 5th lowest, but how many counties are there? There's not that many counties, right?
There's also individual towns, so
What's
not
the
everybody.
basket? We're 5th out of 30?
How many?
50?
Good question. I'd say there's at least 50.
All right, so we're in the bottom decile of.
Yeah.
Hence why I wanted to bring that to your attention,
not
yes. You know, there's a very few communities that are over 100%. It's very rare, but there certainly are some
So
communities.
where does one go to lobby that organization for a higher, because we don't control it, we do what they tell us, right? So where would one go for?
You'd have to probably go to the county retirement board.
A board, so that's individuals appointed by,
That's a good question. I don't know who they're appointed by.
This is the board that asked us for more money last year.
Right.
maybe we should have a
Is there
meeting
a
with them,
reason?
Ryan.
You can. That will increase your assessment, though.
Whoops.
Oops. Okay.
Yes, but, okay. The discussion should happen anyway. Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Right below the
sorry.
net pension, no need to apologize. Right below the net pension liability is net OPEB liability. And OPEB stands for other post-employment benefits, is essentially the health insurance for the town of Carlisle. And that had a balance of $10,328,000. It's largely unchanged from the prior year. But the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention was to let you know about the funding percentage for the town of Carlisle. So I'd actually like to turn to the last page of the financial statements. It's page 68.
Oh, boy.
Right there, Ryan.
Page 8 of,
53,
Page
No, it's
68.
68.
oh, 68.
61,
Perfect.
enclosed 65, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yay.
So page 68 is some required supplementary information, and I think it really shows a great illustrative example of how much the liability is, how much funds you put aside, and what your funding percentage is. So on that very top piece, we'll see it says the schedule of the net OPEB liability. And if you look at that very first column, that 2023 column, you'll see that the total OPEB liability was determined to be $13,117,000.
Excuse me, sorry, one sec. I'm on page 68 and I'm not seeing what you're referencing.
Ryan,
Says
you
at the
wanna-
top,
Right
notes
there.
to,
No, you're not on page
note
68.
18, no.
68 is
on-
labeled, not 68 of the PDF.
Oh, whoa, sorry.
My
Sorry, I
apologies.
get it. No, that's not your
All right,
fault.
so go back.
My
Sorry.
mistake, sorry. Let me get down there. Thanks.
Okay.
Are you there?
Yeah,
So right at the top, you'll see the schedule of the net OPEB liability. So the town actually hired an actuary to come in and determine what the value of this liability is. And your actuary determined that it's a liability of $13,117,000. But right below that, that's the amount of funds that the town of Carlisle has put aside to begin funding this liability. And the town's put aside about $2.8 million. So you can see your funding percentage is at 21.27%. Now, I know that is low, and it does look low because it is low. But when you're looking at your contemporaries and your peers in the Commonwealth, generally what you see is anywhere from 0 to 10% funded for cities and towns. So the town of Carlisle to be at 21% funded is a good financial position relative to your peers, and your users of the financial statements are going to view that very favorably. What they like to see is a commitment to funding it year over year over year, just starting to chip away at that, making those annual contributions what the town of Carlisle does. And again, that's going to be viewed favorably by your users of the financial statements. I'm going to jump back to page 15. That was everything I wanted to bring to your attention on the long-term financial view for the town of Carlisle. I'd like to jump into the short-term financial view for the town of Carlisle.
Back to 15,
page 50, did you say?
15.
15,
Yep.
that's on the report.
Just before we leave OPEB,
yeah.
below that, you cite a coverage for the current payroll. I mean, that's a different metric, I guess. What's the relevance of that metric?
That is a good question. I'll have to follow up with you on that one.
Okay. Because, I mean, I guess I can say, it's hard to say. Okay, let's just leave it at a phone. So what page are we?
Page 15 and-
15.
of the report,
15,
not of the
yeah.
PDF.
Yeah, got it. Okay. We're getting
So page 15 is the second balance sheet that we're going to be looking at tonight, whereas pages 12 and 13 with a long-term financial view, page 15 is the short-term financial view for the town of Carlisle. As you can see that there are 5 columns here. The very first column is your general fund, which is your general fund and your stabilization funds. Your next fund is your major community preservation fund, which is your CPA fund. The next major fund is your American Rescue Plan Act fund, which is your ARPA. And then you have your non-major governmental funds, which is the consolidation of all other special revenue funds, capital project funds, and trust funds that aren't otherwise presented. Then that far right column, your total governmental funds, is just a summation of the previous 4 columns. But I want to focus just on that general fund column, that very first column, and I want to go 3 numbers from the bottom. So Ryan, if you could scroll down just a little bit. That's your unassigned fund balance, and this is the most important number in your financial statements, in my opinion. And that's for 2 reasons. The first reason is it is the starting point for your free cash calculation. So when you're certifying your free cash, and Kelly's doing that for the town, that's really the starting point for that calculation and that process. Now, the Government Finance Officers Association recommends 2 months of unassigned fund balance when comparing to your operating expenditures, or about 17%. And as of June 30th, 2023, the town of Carlisle is at 18%. So that's a good financial position, again, for the town of Carlisle to be in. It's right where the Government Finance Officers Association recommends that you be for an unassigned fund balance. Now, your unassigned fund balance did increase by $578,000 from the prior year. And the reason for that is primarily due to your favorable budgetary results of operation in your general fund. You had turnbacks of $1.4 million on your budgetary results of operation in fiscal year 23. And we'll get into that here in a bit more of a second. I can show that to you in an illustrative example. So the town increased your unassigned fund balance by 1.4, but then you utilized $374,000 for your capital items in your fiscal year 23. And you used $715,000 in your 24 budgeting process for your capital items, as well as a reduction in your taxes. So that's why you see that increase of about $516,000. If I could turn to page 61, we can actually take a look at the general fund budgetary versus actual results.
Fingers get a workout.
So, before we get out of this sec, everything else shows essentially no unassigned fund balance.
So unassigned fund balance is only a positive number for the general fund. An unassigned fund balance in any other fund would only represent a deficit balance.
Deficit balance. So is it, because Ryan has identified pots of unused money that I'm guessing come out of that 1, 2, 3, 4th column. But they would be hidden inside.
The non-major governmental funds?
Yeah, but where would you find it if?
That would be sitting in your restricted fund balance.
It would be in that 3.8 million.
That's correct. And there's a breakout on page 40 of what makes up that 3.8 million.
Okay, it's 40, okay.
We don't have to go there right now unless you'd like to.
I'm just gonna make my own note, because I mean, that's part of what we're doing forensically, nothing to do with your audit particularly, but, you know, how do we get at that?
Yeah, so page 40 actually provides a great breakdown of every single number that's in that fund balance.
Okay.
It provides some really good detail for you.
All right, good, thank you.
Page 61. So page 61 is your general fund budgetary versus actual. You can see there's 4 columns here. You have your original budget in that very first column. You have your final budget, and then the actual amounts or the actual revenues or the actual expenditures for the town. And then that far right column, which is where I want to focus our attention here tonight, is the favorable or unfavorable variance when comparing your final budget to the actual amount. 61.
Sorry, 61.
No need to apologize. So if you look maybe about a third of the way down the page, you'll see total revenues. And that far right column had turnbacks of $614,000. What this represents is the amount of revenues that came in greater than what the town anticipated during fiscal year 23. About 2/3 of the way down the page, you'll see total expenditures. And total expenditures had favorable turnbacks of $522,000. What this represents is the amount of expenditures that came in less than what the town anticipated during fiscal year 23. And then that last number on that far right, Ryan, if you scroll down just a little bit, please. That last number in that far right column, which is your overall budgetary excess, is $1,356,000. This can be thought of what the town beat the budget by. And again, that's the primary reason for that increase in your unassigned fund balance, was those turnbacks on your budgetary versus actual results during fiscal year 23. Now, again, the town did utilize some of those funds for capital items in 23, as well as capital and reduction in taxes in 24.
Okay, but just So this is kind of like the town's P and L, right?
I would say that page 17 is probably the town's P&L, or I guess you could think of this as the town's P&L.
Well, this is the revenues less expenditures, right? So,
Specifically just for the general fund.
okay, fair enough. So in both, but that's most of the money. So in both cases, we actually we spent more than, we both budgeted and spent more than we took in, but less than we, favorable to budget, I guess.
Yes.
The gap closing is in the very bottom, right? And that's how you close that budgetary gap, how you balance that budget.
We didn't no.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, if you look at, it's not really the audit.
$1,000,003 is the 522 plus the,
Look at the original budget. We planned on
yes,
raising 33 million and spending 34 million, and the difference would be made up by using prior year fund balance, which I guess is,
Encumbrances and article carry forwards.
okay, all right. And then we did better than that, so we,
yeah.
I guess, we still used the same amount of carry forwards, so where did we actually pick up then?
So if you go up top, if you want to look at revenues, I can highlight maybe a couple.
Yeah.
If you look at miscellaneous, which is the line item right above total revenues.
Yeah,
That had a favorable variance of $125,000. That represents the amount of revenue that came in greater than what you anticipated.
okay,
And for example, the town did not anticipate $23,000 of opioid funds coming in.
yeah.
So you didn't budget for that, but they did come in as actual revenue, so that's why that's part of the reason why you see that increase in that favorable variance
Yeah,
for
right.
miscellaneous.
Okay, all right.
It's not necessarily poor planning or,
No, it's not poor planning. I mean, it's
Okay, well,
great.
I'm
I'm
just
just saying, so we ended up not using the carry forwards, I guess. I don't know.
No, you did, so
No,
the
we
actual
did.
amounts are,
Oh, there is carry forwards, yeah. So I'm not sure where it shows up then. This benefits us as more free cash?
it increases your unassigned fund balance, which is the starting point for your free
Okay,
cash.
so
certificate.
eventually when it flows through, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
It can be thought of as it's closing to free cash.
okay.
So a way of looking at this when we're talking about projecting revenue for the coming year, and then talking about how squeezing the expense side would squeeze free cash. So if you said we wanted to intentionally generate 1% on revenue and 1% on expenses, that would be about 700,000. Just work with me on the rough math.
Yeah.
This beat that by 600,000. So for my mind, and it's probably my
2%.
only the investment income and the miscellaneous income, which I don't think we can bank on every year, was about 250,000 of that. And then we had some non-employee fills, especially in DPW and public safety. So that's another about 100 to 200,000. So that doesn't necessarily make it up and doesn't mean we won't do it again this year, but that is where the excess free cash came from, based off a calculation. But this is also the 23 audit.
yeah.
So we're behind. This is from a couple years ago now.
Okay.
And that was everything I wanted to bring to your attention in the financial statements. Any questions or concerns before I move into the
Right.
management letter?
I cut you off, though. Is that where you were going to the management letter?
Yes.
Okay.
Which begins,
That's the next document.
which is
After the wide stuff.
63? No,
No, it's after.
After
right
page
that.
68.
after 68, okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
There it
I
is.
see it, thank you.
So in addition to proving out the figures and the numbers in your financial statements, we also look at the town's internal controls to make sure your assets are being appropriately safeguarded. And if we had any recommendations on how to improve those internal controls, we would recommend them here in a formal management letter. If they were serious enough, we'd either classify them as a material weakness or a significant deficiency, and the town does not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. If we could turn maybe to the first page, number 3, is the first recommendation that we have is to improve controls over the vendor disbursements. During our testing of vendor disbursements, we had a couple of items that we identified as a lack of internal controls, and we're just recommending that the town improve those internal controls over those vendor disbursements. Halfway down the page, Ryan, you'll see that the second comment is to improve controls over the departmental receipts. Again, we noticed some during our audit, we identified some areas where internal controls could have been improved over the disbursement process and the reconciliation of not disbursement, of receipts, and then the reconciliation of receipts.
Just to clarify on both of those findings, these are maybe shortcomings in process that could lead to errors, not finding of actual errors, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I would maybe take that back, that they're under the vendor disbursements. There were 2 findings, not potential issues. There were issues.
Where there was a discrepancy that was not caught or not resolved.
That's correct.
Yeah, that was, I think that was during the period where we had an interim
Yeah.
town administrator, so we were having struggles with our procurement.
And one of them was me, so we,
Okay.
scanning a document that I lost. But the general takeaway for me is that procurement needs to be centralized and focused on
Yeah,
and improved.
yeah. And then for number 2, we've just approved some
Controls.
Policy.
policies. And so I think we're going to get a handle on that pretty soon.
We turn the page to page 4. At the very top, there's our 3rd recommendation, which is to prepare for the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 101. This is nothing that the town did wrong. This is just more of an FYI, letting you know that there's an accounting standard that the town is going to need to implement for 2025. And it's called GASB, or the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 101, and it deals with your compensated absences. Will certainly help and be a resource for the town to help the town implement that accounting change. But it's nothing you need to worry about right now. It needs to be implemented for your June 30, 2025 financial statements. At the bottom of page 4,
So that means
Yeah,
it'd be
but,
implemented, though, at the beginning of fiscal '25.
Yeah.
correct.
Starting this
So I
July.
guess my question is,
Okay.
are we considering engaging a consultant, and is that in our budget
For,
for,
Implementing 101.
yeah, the GASB?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm just, yeah, look,
My initial gut tells me it's not necessary. Usually from the audit side of the fence, they will assist with kind of those initial feelers to put out what needs to happen, what steps should be taken, what the end goal is to help us get that done, but I don't foresee a need.
and thankfully, you did correctly identify that it needs to be implemented for July 1st of 2024. Thankfully, it doesn't need to be really implemented on July 1st, 2024. It just needs to be implemented by the end of the fiscal year. It's one of those odd ones where it doesn't really matter till the very end. So you really have till June 30.
But the record keeping has to be in place so that when you reach back, you've got the data, right? I presume.
Yes, the record keeping is, the town already has compensated absences in their
Right.
financial statements. It deals with your
Yeah.
sick and vacation.
Right.
And largely speaking, what this accounting change does, it just clarifies the terms, and there may be some additional liabilities associated with it. But largely speaking, what the town is currently doing is acceptable and totally fine for the compensated absence calculation. It's not going to need to be a major overhaul, to be probably a slight adjustment, if anything.
And just because I can't help it, the primary role, in my opinion, of the select board and the boards and committees here is to help us with decentralized HR and making sure that we have standards across the board so that we can record properly, report, and implement policies such as these. So right now, there's so many different approval authorities, et cetera, that although I do believe we have a good handle on it, it's not fully in our control.
got it,
Centralized.
HR at least, yes.
yeah, well, we've been,
Well, that's page 5, right? Recommends that. That's what he recommends.
At the bottom of page 4 is our last recommendation. It's our other recommendations. It's just kind of an amalgamation of everything that we wanted to bring to your attention, but we didn't think it was serious enough or to warrant a separate recommendation. Again, I don't think anything in here to be concerned about. It was rather some smaller items. Again, nothing that I would, be concerned about or keep me up at night.
and this, I think, is also the subject of another policy we just drafted about tailings, so. we're on top of it.
And in chatting with you, Kelly, you're working on all those things. It's just
Yeah,
slow.
many of the items on the list are either in the works, have already been completed, or soon to be completed pending, certain formal approvals, so.
I have a quick question, if that's okay. Zach, you went through these recommendations, and it was great. Before that section, you said there was another section, you said we don't really have any of the recommendations on risk or
Were you talking about the material weaknesses and?
Yeah, the material weaknesses, and I did see in there that you said you should consider a policy on custodial credit risk, and I'm wondering if that was, not in that letter, but in the reports, in the notes in the reports.
Oh, yes.
And I didn't know if that would be considered a weakness, or if we should consider a policy on that.
I don't know if that's necessarily a weakness in your internal control, but it's certainly a good idea for the town to explore having a policy on that and making sure that everyone's aligned with what you'd like to do. I believe that came up with our
Yeah,
meeting.
we discussed it, and we did discuss it in sort of the pre-meeting, and I believe, I forgot to bring my notes today, but didn't we talk about meeting with Bartholomew and those guys and having that conversation?
Yep, yeah, and we've done a post-meeting with Bartholomew with 2 of their reps.
Right.
And my recollection from that discussion was that we're kind of right in line with what our
Right.
expectation is for a municipality.
Right, so that I go to too many meetings and I can't keep them straight, but yes, you're right. We went to talk to Bartholomew. My recollection then is, to your point, Kelly, that we're in the band of where we should be, but it doesn't quite address, should there be a policy look or some other steering guideline that we, have to make sure that we're always in that, I mean, just the fact that you're in compliance doesn't mean you have a process to maintain compliance.
It was only because they noted it that I.
No, but I think we brought it up, and I guess I didn't follow to that next step. Do we need to go further, or do we just meet with them annually and make sure that we continue? I mean, that's
I think we
the
can
question.
continue an annual meeting.
Okay.
I know they said that they would send out reports on an annual basis based
right.
on, our performance and everything in that nature, so.
Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about that.
Any other questions? I think that was an excellent report.
Very thorough,
Yep.
thank you.
I would say just, having dealt with both of our 2 most recent auditing agencies, we got an upgrade.
Yeah.
Pleasure to work with
Yes.
Zach and his team.
Yeah.
I found them to be very clear and thorough. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could, I'd just like to make a quick statement. An audit is not an easy undertaking. We ask a lot of questions and ask for a lot of material, and everybody in the town, specifically Kelly and Sandy, were wonderful to work with. Everything we asked for was provided for us very timely. And a first-year audit does take, generally speaking, more time than a non-first-year audit. And having it done in the time that we got it done, I think is a great goal and a great task for the town. I just want to thank everyone for their involvement in the audit.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Zach.
so much for having me. Enjoy the rest of your night, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. You too.
See ya. See you around.
Great.
Okay. Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Conservation Commission, and we'd like to start with the Cranberry Bog Goals and Capital Plan, and then move to the Bog House repairs request. Put in that order.
Do they need to open
Do
their-
they need to open?
Do you need to open your meeting?
No, we have Dan.
I think the answer is yes.
I don't count.
Oh, okay.
No, Sylvia.
She's the only one that counts.
No.
Are you going to ask anything of the MFC during this related to the Bog House? They may want to open it.
Will the MFC want to open a meeting during this discussion? Okay. All right.
Hello,
Hi.
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 Oh, Alex.
for the record, Alex Parra, I'm a member of the Conservation Commission. Sylvia Willard is here. This was billed on the Select Board's agenda as a meeting to do with the goals for the Cranberry Bog. I tried to expand it a little bit, as you can see from my memo, but let me just run down and we can have reference to the memo where it's appropriate. But there are really 3 major things going on with the Cranberry Bog right now. The first category is the repair of dam number 1 and potentially the Fifth Street dike. The reasons for those repairs are partly because they're required by the Office of Dam Safety, and more importantly, from the perspective of the town of Carlisle, is we want to have the ability to manage water levels in the pond and in the bog without risking, failure of either the dam or the dike. So I've put in the memo, which is sort of the long-term capital needs requirements for the Cranberry Bog are the repair of dam number 1, which is funded by a CPA article approved at the spring 2023 town meeting. We also anticipate submitting a request for CPA funding for repairs of the Fifth Street dike. We put in very loosely a number of 150,000 for that. I don't know how good that number is, and it will probably change by the time we submit the request. At the same time, we're hoping that town meeting, and this is the second part of the overall plan, we're hoping that town meeting, the spring annual town meeting, will approve a CPA funding request for a study of the water flows and water levels. And that article has, been presented and voted by CPC. And that will inform how the dam and the dike will be operated once they're repaired, in terms of, again, maintaining water levels in the ponds, and so on and so forth. So that's 1 and 2. Part 3 is we have a 3-year plan which has been approved by the Conservation Commission. Notice of intent was filed with the Commonwealth, and it's been approved. And that's for maintenance of the bogs themselves as wet meadow habitat. And if you go to, I had a maintenance activities list, which I'll get to later, but if you go to it, essentially from the middle of the table on down.
Oh, sorry, we're gonna.
Yeah, if you go to the second page.
Yep.
So you can see on the left-hand corner, we've identified land and the nature of maintenance, expected expenses. And so if you start with approximately the middle, Phragmites treatment, you go down, all of the activities identified as being part of bog maintenance are activities that are proposed to occur in connection with the maintenance of the bogs as wet meadow habitats. So those are essentially all of the new maintenance categories that would occur if we go forward with the wet meadow habitat maintenance. So that's the summary of at least the 3-year plan for the Cranberry Bog.
But those are annual, Alex, those are annual?
Yeah, those are annual numbers.
So it's about 10,000 a year.
Well,
No,
the-
68,000 a year.
Wait,
68,000
but-
the total.
Well, I don't know about that, you forget
no,
that
I'm
bog.
talking about the bog.
yeah,
No, but he's talking about
well,
the bog itself being, yeah, we're
Hang
talking,
on, hang on.
I do have a number, I can make it out for you. The bog maintenance
yeah.
is in total, which includes stuff that's happening now and what we anticipate going forward, other than the bog house,
Right,
would be 38,400
38.
And that would be, I mean,
Roughly per year?
per year.
Yeah.
and so things like invasive removal, phragmites, blah, 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 that, every year, you gotta do that every year, right? You gotta
Well-
stay on it, right? You can't just do it and forget about it, right?
I'll get to that.
Okay. No, but is that,
Yeah, but no,
Sorry,
not
there's
everything has to
26.5, I
happen
missed
every
that.
year.
Okay.
So for example, I have a category there of mowing of the bogs, for $6,000.
Right.
One could reasonably assume that that might be every 2 years.
I see, okay. So, and is,
I'm trying to lay out all of the activities.
and at least as your proposed 2024 budget, these things are in that. Are they in that operating budget now?
Yes, so the request that I'm going to make
Where's
tonight.
Ryan when we need him? I mean, it's in the numbers,
is good.
it's in the numbers rolled up to Ryan,
Yes.
I presume, right? Okay.
So, let me just finish up, is that
Yeah.
with the plan for the bog is that, and Conscom is yet to vote this, but I think we're in agreement that the Cranberry Bog Working Group would be rolled up, and to the extent that, members of the Cranberry Bog Working Group would like to continue to serve, it would be rolled into the Land Steward Committee. And the reason for that is that they have the resources and the talent to carry forward with the Cranberry Bog. And one of the things that I think the land stewards would like to do is to plan out beyond this 3-year plan for, additional restoration activities and maintenance. And that's going to be a substantial undertaking. That's a lot of work. But I think that's where the Conservation Commission is headed. And so hopefully that occurs. So that's the plan. You see the money. So we had, with respect to the budget, we had made a request to FinCom, and so just so you understand, our budget is largely non-discretionary. There's no room in, most of the items, and except for the very small items, and you don't get any gain there. The largest part of our discretionary budget has been maintenance, and that historically for the last several years until last year was funded at $29,000 a year. And that was divided roughly $15,000 for the Cranberry Bog and $14,000 for everything else. Given this plan, we had submitted to FinCom a proposed budget that would increase the maintenance part of the budget to $50,000 a year. We were told that we need to reduce our request by $11,500. So in my backward mathematics, that left me with our Conscom with a maintenance budget of $38,500. I understand, and Warren can speak to it better than I can, but I understand that the Select Board have indicated the willingness to fund interim repairs for the preservation of the bog house at about $10,000. So I threw that in there, and that takes me down to $28,500, which is clearly insufficient if we're going to start on the on the restoration of the bog and all of these other items that we have laid out. So the request that Conscom is making is for an appropriation at town meeting this year of $26,500, which would make up, and that includes the interim repairs for the bog house, which would at least, give us a start on the restoration of the bog and the implementation of the operation and maintenance plan that we expect the hydrologist to be recommending. So I'm happy to look at any of the numbers the board wants to look at. I tried to lay it out as best I could. One other thing that I should mention, by the way, and I did make a mention of it here, but the Curve Street Dam is not only going to need an emergency action plan according to the Office of Dam Safety, but Sylvia reminded me on the way here that there will also be requiring an inspection next year, and that in the past has cost the town about $7,000 or $8,000
Well,
for two.
The next year, there will be a requirement for 2 inspections, one for Curve Street and one for the Cranberry Bog Dam number 1, because Curve Street's every 5 years and Cranberry Bog Dam number 1 is every 10 years, and they coincide.
Every 5 years.
2000. And that, the last go-round, which was in 2015, was around $7,000 or $8,000. I don't know if it would be the same. The catch on that is at any time, the Office of Dam Safety can ask for a Phase 2 inspection for a dam that they think has problems, and that's a much bigger deal. We just never know what they're going to order. The Office of Dam Safety has been increasingly tough over the last few years. This year in particular, they have made a lot of changes.
I just would say that with respect to dam number 1, even though we're scheduled for an inspection next year, I'm hopeful that with the funding of the study, we'll be able to go to the Office of Dam Safety early this summer and tell them, what we're doing, interim repairs that we want to make, and hold off on the other repairs until, the study is in, and that we won't be facing an inspection for dam number 1 next year.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board?
Just one, not so much a question, but Alex, maybe you mentioned this and I just didn't hear it. This is within the framework, your proposal is within the framework of, in fiscal year '26, moving toward having the maintenance of our conservation lands be part of an overall town maintenance budget. Am I right? And not have it be just isolated within the Conservation Commission. So that's so the thinking is, rather than try to raise their operating budget for fiscal year '25, which, sets it up, instead stick to the 3% maintenance budget that every other department's being asked to meet, and therefore the request to just fund what's needed for FY '25 as a warrant article. I don't know if that's making sense, but.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that is, we would anticipate then that our FY '26 budget would go down because all the maintenance would be, in the town budget. And this conversation is, developed. I've had a chance to meet with Ryan and spoken with Barney, and Sylvia and Dan, and we think this is a better way to handle the maintenance aspects. So, sometime around, I guess, January or February of 2025, we would give Ryan a list of, this is what we think will need to be done for fiscal 2026, and to include for planning purposes, and selectmen will see that, rather than this just kind of being insular within the Conservation Commission. So that would be.
And hopefully this sort of longer-term planning, right, would be underway, so it wouldn't just be isolated to fiscal year '26, but we'd start to have a broader, longer-term plan for the maintenance, preservation of all the conservation lands in town.
Is that the Land Stewardship Committee that's really going to be focused on that, or?
Well, so, like I said, this conversation has, been developing in the past 3 or 4 weeks. Again, I think the land stewards, have, the talent to help us do that. I would hope that there would be
As the chair.
having things thrown his way. But yeah, no, I would hope that the land stewards could help with that as well, because Conservation Commission spends so much of its time on wetlands
Sure.
permitting stuff.
Sure. I'd like to see that longer-term plan as to what we're doing with how we're managing our conservation lands. I think that's a good thing to focus on.
Yeah.
We should probably focus on that, make sure that happens, I think, as a select board.
Yeah.
I think it's also helpful if you know that there's this pot of money out there, that you can do some long-term planning that might not have had the ability to do before. An example I'm thinking of is sort of forest stewardship. We've spent a lot of time recently on our fields and meadows, and might be a good idea to have some of our forests looked at to make sure that they're in good health. Do we have any invasive bugs that are coming in? And if they're not managed well, that spreads to other, even private property. And so there's more to it than just the bog and just meadows.
Sure. I think that dovetails into, municipal preparedness and, the MVP grant that we have. I mean, you can talk about how forest and, understanding that and making sure there's not risks of, forest fire risks, those type of things are important. And you might be able to glean money that way, as a focus.
I'd like to ask a few disparate questions. So Sylvia, you just mentioned I can't remember the words you used, but like a reserve, you wanted to have money available for long-term planning? What do you mean by that?
Well, and what he is talking about, if you identify money for maintenance of the conservation lands.
Yep.
If there's money set aside for maintaining conservation lands.
But what do you mean set aside? I mean, we budget every year on what we
Yeah.
need, right? We don't set
Right,
stuff aside.
In the same way that you budget maintenance of buildings and roads, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, it should go into the operating budget.
Yes,
It's not like we would have a separate
Right.
little fund for that, right? It would just be
Right.
an ongoing understanding of what it takes to maintain those. So I agree with that. So the second question is,
David, do you mind if I add? So the deferred maintenance with land, I see, is similar to the deferred maintenance with buildings.
right,
So when one of the variables when we're doing the capital planning models that I bring up as an unknown is land management cost.
Right.
So the idea behind using a warrant article to get a hold of deferred versus actual operating would allow that picture to become more clear over a couple years.
so, well, that I guess leads to my second question. So maintenance, whether it's buildings or land, is an operating expense, not a capital item, correct?
I just don't know the difference between what is the catch-up with the land and what is the ongoing cost.
Right.
And this would allow the time to figure that out.
Sure. So that leads to my second question, which is you're asking for 26,500
for that, right? To kind of catch up I mean, I see the haircut, if you will, that says the budget should be down to 38 to fit inside the 3% model. If you have a warrant article for more money, isn't that basically defeat the 3% model? I mean, what are you actually accomplishing there?
My recommendation is that you are uncovering what the actual cost is, so you can compare it to other deferred maintenance.
But why have a warrant article? Why not just decide, okay, this one, not every department can fit inside the 3%, right? They all have reasons why they can't. Some are going to and some are not going to. You wouldn't put warrant articles to cover the shortfall. You just increase the budget and you live with what that sum is, right?
So I can tell when FinCom especially is uncomfortable with a budget ask, when they say, well, what is this actually for? The department knows what it's for. They have a strong understanding of the maintenance that's needed, but it's not fit into the larger picture. So the reason why I think the budget ask in the operating budget feels out of place is because it's coming from a silo, not from a full capital plan. So the warrant gives you time to figure out.
I don't know. I think I see that as more obfuscation than real. I think, first of all, it's not a capital item. It's an operating item. It just happens to be a catch-up operating item, right? If we have deferred maintenance that we have not done, or we have a repurposing of the bog because it's moving into wet meadowlands or whatever, that's fine, but that's an operating expense. And I think it's not transparent. I think we should say, if we have, and this could be any department, if we agree that that particular department's needs exceeds their, when a department comes and they exceed their 3% ceiling, we have a choice. We can say, I'm sorry, cut to 3 and come back, then just that's that. Or we can say, go find some unused pots of money like we're telling the schools to do and come back. Or we can say, gee, that makes sense, we'll include it. I think for FinCom to say they don't understand it, they explain it to FinCom. I mean, we need to have a single operating budget that includes all the operating things that we decide are worthy of spending money on in fiscal '25.
I don't think you have a clear way to compare the ask on the land maintenance side with the asks that come from the department. So if the police department said we want 2 cruisers, you would ask for a vehicle maintenance plan and a long-term plan. If the MFC came and said, here's what we want to do with maintenance, you would ask for a capital plan. I think the same thing is needed with land maintenance, because if you leave it to the department, they will always say we need to do more maintenance, but you can't compare it to all the other needs.
But a plan, I'm okay with a plan. I like what Travis said. I'm okay with a plan. I'm just saying, at the end, why fund it through a warrant article?
But you're raising the base, so the next year, 3% of that's going to be that much more too.
So you're saying
this is a way for you to to really be very.
All right, fair enough. My last question goes back to dam number 1. So the money that's being, I realize it's not coming out of the operating, it's coming from CPA, but that's when and if this new study determines that the approach you've recommended is the approach, right? Right now, we're just funding a study on the dam, right?
No, the study is being funded by CPA.
Yep.
The construction has been funded, up to $300,000 has been funded by CPA. The intent is that some of the work on the repairs will go forward before the study. The study is expected to be concluded at the end of this year.
The calendar year.
At the end of this calendar year, yes.
Okay.
Some of the work everybody agrees needs to be done as soon as possible. So the anticipation, subject to ODS approval, is that those repairs will go forward this year.
Okay.
Probably in August or September.
Okay, and the people who didn't like the approach and you guys reached, at least as reported in the paper, some agreement on a path forward, they're okay with that part of the work?
I believe so.
It's some other part of the work that they want you to have peer review. Okay.
Yes, correct.
Which you're referencing as dam number 1. It's
Is that
about,
not dam number
no,
1?
that you're correct. It's about the spillway.
Right, but
in
it's all in that.
particular, and so that's
bucket.
what's being separate it out.
separating
And
it
it's going to
out.
wait until the
Right,
watershed study
okay,
is
that's all I
done.
wanted to make sure. that-
It's a broader study than just the
Yeah.
spillway.
Okay, thank you. Got it, thank you very much.
Any other questions about this portion?
You want a motion for the, are they looking for a
Yes,
motion to?
Well, I don't know that we, John? Sure,
Come up to
Okay.
the mic, John.
to a mic.
Sing your school fight. You have to sing your school fight song.
John Ballantyne, 268 Fisk Street, and also as one of the appellants on this whole Conberry Bog Dam. But I want to make two broader points, which you just were talking about, which was the deferred maintenance. And the deferred maintenance is really the consequences of the past 14 years related to the school. And so that's why you need the study to understand it, both for the facilities and conservation land. And we don't have enough information on that deferred maintenance to know what it is. So Alex and Sylvia have put together their best estimate of what that is, but we know that when you start looking at the details, and this is sort of what, land stewardship and everything else, you say, oh, gee, we've got volunteers that came out that helped clear parts of the brush at the bog. You have other volunteers that do the trails. So how can we look at that and sort of get our arms around that? And that's what I think Warren and everybody else is going to be doing. So that's a really important part of really getting our arms around that, so you come up with a deferred maintenance plan. We've kind of looked at it, what's the level of volunteers, what are you contracting out with, and everything else. So that's why I think this is important to look at it in those sort of long-term perspectives. We're doing catch-up. We understand why we did that. Maybe it wasn't a good decision, but that's life. That's what the town decided once we built the two schools. The second part, and this is this sort of $15,000 increment that essentially what Alex was talking about, that's the consequence when we decided not to continue the in-kind services that were provided by Farmer Duffy of doing the bog. And as Warren remembers, when we went through that, that was the estimate that we thought was going to be the incremental expenses for, annually on the bog, which in present value finance terms was worth about essentially what it would have been cost to maintain it as agriculture. We made a decision, and the CONSCOM made a decision not to do that, so therefore all the in-kind services that we've had disappeared. And so that becomes then the consequence of how do you then maintain it, where there's really not a huge incentive for the current farmer to keep doing it. It's, it's a pain. He has to go out there and do things and things like that. So that's the part that we have to look at pretty carefully, and that's going to take a certain amount of work. So I think I'm very supportive of that. We don't know exactly what that maintenance budget is going to be, and you should be looking at all the conservation lands, and I think land stewardship and other people and all the volunteers that are doing it are really important to that.
But, John, thank you for that. I don't see a request for a funding of a study, though. Is that a study that would be done by volunteers? Not there yet.
That's land stewardship and all of us volunteers.
His
It's a maintenance
description
plan.
of rolling the Cranberry Bog Working Group in
Right,
with the
but
land
right.
stewardship, but they're going to make a plan that's looking
Okay,
long-term.
Working with
Is that going to result in but we're sitting here on the cusp of fiscal 25 spend plan. If they don't ask, whoever it is, LSC or CONSCOM, I don't care, if they don't ask, like in the now time, they're not going to ask for a year. It's going to be another year.
And I know
Alex is
Warren.
saying
Warren is very hardworking and detailed, and he's going to get everybody doing all the work.
Okay, so you're not asking for money for an,
No,
okay.
it's people
okay.
volunteer work.
That's great. I love it.
putting their
I
heads
love it. I
together
love
and
it.
coming up what can
That's a good answer. The other question,
worked with Warren on a
Okay.
180-page.
so I understand that.
And as Alex, mentioned in his presentation, the sense is that the Land Stewardship Committee has the expertise.
Okay,
They have the
then that's
knowledge to
terrific.
be able to.
I think that's terrific.
And we got still
Right.
some young bodies. And
Yeah, now we have Mr. Duffy, and what I hear you saying is, the guy, we're not farming cranberries anymore, so stuff he used to do, part of cranberry farming, is not getting done. We have to budget for that, and I can hear John Lavery in my ear saying, well, what about the guy who lives in the bog house? So, just to be clear, the 10,000 that's in this last line item here, we agreed last time or 2 times ago, was just the necessary safety-related fixes.
That's Julie in the bog house, which is the next thing on the.
Okay, so we're coming to bog house, or I thought we were done with.
We haven't done the bug house yet.
Okay,
We haven't
all right,
done-
fair
So anyway, I'm generally
got it,
supportive of
I got
this,
it.
and that we're getting to agreement on all the details of things that you've read about in the newspaper.
Okay.
and
Great.
stuff. not been easy, but we're getting there.
And I'm
so I
going
just
to move us along.
But don't we need unless we're going to come back to this warrant article at a subsequent meeting, at least don't we want a sense of the board about whether we support a warrant article to this
We're going to
effect?
have a public hearing as well.
Yeah.
You could certainly give the Board of, the CONSCOM a sense.
Yeah. So are we all in agreement about?
I think it makes sense. I like the planning aspect, and I'd say it again. I think that it's really important that because we're looking out budgeting for buildings and everything else, we need to think about our lands and like how we're going to manage them and what that's going to cost going forward. And I think that's really important that we get a handle on that, because we also need to make decisions on, how we want to use those lands. We may not want to, continue to support certain activities or whatever on those, I don't know exactly what, but, we may choose to use them differently or something. So it's important. Let's get a guide, a map going forward.
I think this is the way to do it, so I'm
Okay.
supportive of it.
Okay, great.
Okay. Bog house repairs request. You want
How do we
to come
wanna-
back up and,
There's
Well,
nothing in the
this is-
packet on that, though. just-
No, but this is sort of a revisit of our conversation that we had 2 weeks ago,
oh, okay.
right? Where and maybe
Although,
Ryan, you want to
I'm
speak to
thinking that
this?
we should start bringing some of these ends together, because there's some other things that are going on around the Bog house, so that,
Yep.
I'm just wondering if,
So this was, a couple people asked me, is it 20,000, is it 10,000? What is the Bog House repair warrant article? So in preparation for a public hearing or the warrant, I didn't know if the board wanted to discuss this again, or if there was some consensus, or if you need more additional information.
And my understanding now is that based on the discussion we just had, that the warrant article that was identified as Bog House repairs is now, I don't know what we're going to call it, but that's now what this 26.5 is. That includes
Includes the
money
10
to
for
do the minimum safety repairs on the Bog House. Do I have
That's
the
the way it's
correct
presented.
understanding?
That's the way it's been presented.
oh,
That's the way it's been
That's-
presented. So that's the idea of
Okay.
this, right?
I think we need to clarify that then,
Yeah.
because that
Right,
makes a
Alex?
big
Am I
difference.
stating that correctly?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
calculations that I put together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sonia's already worrying whether it's enough.
What's the problem?
Yeah, okay, so that is part of the 6844, and that you subtract whatever, and you got to the 26.5.
Yes.
Right.
So, and
Okay, got it. There we go, okay.
I'm just curious, what is the plan with that relative to, even if it's shored up and we spend some money, $10,000 to make sure the water doesn't infiltrate or whatever. I mean, someone said this is another Highland, and how do we ensure, like, what's the next step so that we know what we're gonna do with it? So we're not just preserving it for the sake of preserving it, which maybe is valid, but I think we should know what direction
So-
we're going.
Well,
Isn't that the
tell you that
study that's being
Housing
presented?
Trust-
Yeah, that's a good lead-in to the
Yeah.
Bog House study.
Yeah,
I don't know if we want to jump ahead to that,
I think
or-
we should,
Well,
just,
I mean,
because it's,
it's not really my part, but just let me say the Conservation Commission voted to approve the Affordable Housing Trust doing a study on the Bog House for the purpose of converting it to housing. From Conscom's perspective, now that the farming is no longer, there's no real reason why Conscom should have the ownership, control, however you wanna say it, of the Bog House. But it's harder to change that than it sounds.
Yeah.
Ryan could speak.
so, on our 8:25 agenda, which we're late for, we have some warrant articles and things, and I thought we were gonna, do we have anything about that? No, we don't. Oh, Warren, you have to come to a microphone and identify yourself so that people, Well, wait,
Hold on,
wait till you get to
Come
the,
on in,
Only
come on
because
in.
then people online can hear you, Warren, yeah.
Warren Lyman, 516 Cross Street. Just here for myself, not on behalf of any committee. And having heard that you were going to talk, I think, maybe a little more about the future of the Bog House, I'd like to make a couple of quick comments. It might take just 2 or 3 minutes. If you don't have the time, I have a piece of paper I'll hand you and you can read it at bedtime. So if I can have just a few minutes, I'll proceed. If you don't,
I kind of like to save it to the larger discussion or to the, if we don't get to it, to the community input at the end. Just because we just have quite a lot of things
Understand.
still on our agenda, and we are 15 minutes behind time, more than 15 minutes behind time at this point. So if you do have something written that you can
Yes.
give us, that could also then, that can also go directly verbatim in our minutes.
Yep.
So that we'll get a chance to read those. I'm trying to-
MFC.
Oh, the CPC. Yeah.
And the MFC is here. I didn't know, they wanted to talk about the Bach.
All right, so let us then skip ahead into our agenda to the warrant articles, CPC articles, and let's take the Bog House CPC article so that we can bring everybody in to have this discussion. So don't go away yet, Warren. And come ahead, Jerry.
And then you're going to invite Julia?
And then, yes, that's right.
Okay.
And then we'll have Julie up, and, so do you need to open your meeting, Jerry?
Yes, I think since there are at least 3 of us here, I don't know if anybody else is on Zoom. So I'd like to open a meeting of the Municipal Facilities Committee at 8:40. And I'd like to just start things off by saying on the Municipal Facilities Committee is looking for some clarity on how to deal with the Bach House, and that means, so if there is a warrant article appropriating some money, is the MFC going to spend the money to do those repairs? Is Conscom going to do it? And then there's the larger question of what are we repairing it for?
All legitimate questions.
Are we just going to patch things, which is kind of a legitimate thing to do, but it's nice if you're doing patches to do them in the context of some longer range plan, so we're not wasting money.
Right.
Agreed.
Yes. I would say that certainly the select board's idea was to keep it from burning down accidentally, so that we have a chance to do the studies and think about what we want to do with it long-term. So it would just,
There are the issues of the relationship to the people that are living there right now.
and that's,
What their responsibilities are for maintaining the building, what they can do, what they shouldn't do.
yep,
All of those things need some clarification.
yep. So I'm going to invite Julie forward. No, but.
You're not
no,
expected to.
We're not expecting you to do that.
I'm not expecting answers to.
No, but we
Really good things to raise and,
Yes.
yeah, need to
And
be
we're
figured
trying
out.
to have a larger conversation rather than a bunch of these little, blinkered conversations about, just this part, so that we have a bigger picture.
Yeah, so this, just, or hey, Ryan, do you want to do a little intro to what Julie's going to present?
Yes, so the larger question of the Bog House, we're finding that when we talk about projects, the difficulty is there's a lot of history and there's a lot of people who have very strong feelings about what should happen, and we're trying to bring the board possibilities to either say yes or no to, so that we can create the type of goal that allowed the police station renovation to move forward, which is consolidate behind an idea and move forward, or not. And I think if you continually do that, you'll eventually define the thing that you want to do or not do, without getting each conversation to be talking about every version of Bog House history. So one of the things we wanted to look at based off of many different studies and previous conversations in town, was affordable housing and its viability in the Bog House.
Thanks, Ryan. So yeah, I always kind of jump into these things and I never know if I should back up or what you know and if I should go forward. So here I am again presenting things back to you that were your ideas. So I was asked to try to figure out the components of a feasibility study. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry, I did it on my screen. I need to not do this here, so I'm gonna get ahead of myself. So, you know, the three main components as I see it is an architectural feasibility component, the affordability and funding stack, so kind of figuring out what the different housing unit configurations might be and what level of affordability they might be provided at. And then an engineering feasibility study, right? And so each piece in my mind has certain gating items that would unlock like our ability to really understand the feasibility. And so I'm working on getting the engineering feasibility study scope and quote. I was hoping to have it by the end of last week, and then I was emailing back and forth with them today, and so I think it's like imminent, but I don't have it yet, so I don't have a number on that, but I was thinking it might end up around $20,000 for a total feasibility cost of $50,000. I should back up. I did like ask around as many people as I could for existing documentation, and I went through it and I tried to kind of figure out like what's been done already. I found the Alternatives Committee report. It was really helpful. It actually outlines housing as an option in the Bog House as Alternative 10. There was an asbestos study and some abatement done in the early 90s. And then there's some schematic diagrams that were part of the Alternatives Committee report, which I have later on in the slide. And then I learned just recently that a new well was dug in 2018, actually with CPA funds. And I got some information about that today from Sylvia. So there is still new information coming in as I continue to ask around, but I think I have like a pretty decent handle. I hate to say, like I hazard to say that, but I think I have a pretty decent handle on what it is that we have and what it is we need. So next slide, please, Ryan. There's a lot of considerations to this, and this isn't really in any particular order. And
Land custody is probably the first thing.
Yeah, like I was trying to just kind of put all the, the critical path kind of things that need to happen into one place. So the land custody, the land transfer piece, and then figuring out like the Article 97 piece, and that's something I actually heard back from the EEA today on. They want to set up a meeting with us, so I'm trying to coordinate that and invite the right people to that next week so we can talk about the waiver process, whether it would even be applicable, and then think about, if it's not applicable, what's our next move, right?
Julie, can you just give a two-sentence explanation of Article 97 for those that don't know
And
that?
I welcome people to correct me if I get this wrong, but Article 97 is the 150 acres of the Bog House is Article 97 land, which requires that it be used for a municipal purpose, and municipal purposes are defined differently. So in order to convert the Bog House into housing, we'd need to carve out a portion of the land, and so figuring out what that square footage looks like what's the minimum amount of land that we would need to support whatever the housing program is in the house is something that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But the state has a carve out for 2,500 square feet. It's not clear to me that that's something that we could apply to this, and would 2,500 square feet be enough? Probably not. But we're going to talk about that with the state and kind of understand that a little better. So, and then just some other early considerations, like I've just been thinking about the zoning, right? So we don't really have the zoning in place currently to do this, but there are different options I've seen other communities use. We have some things on the books that potentially we could modify slightly in order to make this work. And then whenever I think about zoning, I think about if we're going to do zoning for one area or one site, like are there other sites we should look at as well? So I've been thinking trying to think a little more broadly about zoning options, and then obviously we need to have legal advice for many of these different components. So next.
I'm not a lawyer, but the question we get the most is the use of the Bog House currently. So the Conservation Commission can license buildings and land for the purposes of the land. So when this was a cranberry farm, you could license the building in order to run the cranberry farm. But when that agricultural purpose went away, now they do not have the ability to license the land or the tenants, right, in the building legally. So only the select board has that authority for town municipal buildings, which is why we need to figure out the custody of the building while still trying to maintain the building and make sure that it doesn't fall apart in the gap between doing something with it and what it's doing now. I think I got that right. I'm just trying to put it in place.
And that gap might be, that's a good point, that gap might be a while. Like this isn't gonna happen overnight. Like these projects take many years and because there's so many moving parts. And then the next slide, if you kind of talks about like funding opportunities. Some communities that have done projects like this, you know, they compile 20 different funding and financing and grants and, you know, so many different piles of money to make it work. So one thing that I've been thinking about is, you know, there's historic opportunities. This property is on the state list of historic properties. So there's state historic tax credits that could be available. There's strings attached, obviously. The National Register listing is something that was, I think, considered in the past for the Bog House, but not actually applied for. That takes a couple years, but it could unlock federal historic tax credits that could be used, that could be beneficial. It's actually one of the first things that other planners and other towns recommend when converting a historic property into housing is get it on the National Register, just because the benefits of that can be really helpful. So obviously understanding the pros and cons and strings and process is important and not up to me to decide. But I shouldn't forget to mention community outreach, just making sure that the right people are hearing this information as we go and are able to weigh in and be involved is important. And then Ryan mentioned the current occupancy, like, you know, just understanding what's gonna happen with that. And then eventually, hopefully, we'll get to a place where we're figuring out the local permitting process because we have a real project, right? And then we'll do some sequencing, kind of like what we're working through with the police station renovation. So, and there's a lot of things like that are not here. I think there's a lot missing, probably a lot of steps, but this is just the ones I was initially thinking of. Next slide, Ryan. All right, so just getting into the pieces of the feasibility. So GNAP Architects, they're one of our house doctor architecture firms. They came out to the site. They thought this structure had good bones. They put together a scope. It includes a number of different things that are listed right there. These schematics at the top of the page, those are from the Alternatives Committee study. So they're great, but they're rough. And so GNAP would put together, you know, architectural dimensioned floor plans of all the 4.5 stories of the house and give us a sense of total square footage and potential opportunities for carving the space up into housing units and some cost estimates. And next slide, please. We also had Answer Advisory. They're affordable housing consultants. They do the whole gamut. So they do front-end consulting all the way through development. We had them come out to and kind of talk to us about the project. They provided a quote for $10,000, and really what they're going to do is kind of vet a whole bunch of different scenarios. There's a lot of terminology that's being thrown around with affordable housing, right? So I think we need to kind of get clear on what it is we're talking about. So are we talking about 8 units, or are we talking about families, right? There's only about 5,000 square feet, I think, in this house. And then, you know, is it workforce? Is it affordable? Is it going to be qualifying for the subsidized housing inventory, which will require us to put together an affordable fair housing marketing plan and do a lottery? And, you know, there's a lot of terminology here. So they're going to kind of help parse that out and give us a sense of what's feasible based on overall project costs and different funding sources. And so that's their scope right up there. Next slide, please, Ryan. And then there's the engineering piece. And these are not really in any particular order because I envisioned that they would be happening in concert and coordinated with each other. But we will need an existing conditions survey of the site done, a wetlands delineation, septic and well, locations, upgrades, what's the capacity, like, and then at the bottom line there, the bottom bullet there is just what's the minimum land area that we'll need to support whatever the program is that we're looking at, right? So what would be that carve out of the Article 97 land? So those are the different elements of that. And then questions?
It's a good overview. Thank you.
Do you have,
Different there.
do you have any sense, I like your steps, and it is a good overview of thinking about how we're going to, move this forward and along the way. But do you have any sense how much, at the end of the day, we would end up spending on something like this?
That's such a tricky question. It's not my area of expertise. That planning board asked similar questions last night when we were talking about it. There are people out there that do that kind of gross math based on square footage. Last night some numbers were thrown around. Like, I don't know. It's not my area, but that's something that Answer Advisory would kind of help us determine.
And do you think there are grants
I
out
would
there for?
sorry.
Hold on one second, Court. Are there grants out there, you said initially, for even the studies of this? Do you think you could get that grant funded?
Yeah, so the Mass Housing has I forgot what they call it, Planning for Housing Production Grant or something like that, that has funded similar types of feasibility studies in other communities. I have information about a project in Hudson that was a similarly priced feasibility study, actually. So I was looking into that. And then there are a number of different financing and funding options available for projects like this, for every step of the way.
And I just want to clarify, we're not talking about the town would be using the funding. This would be for a developer that would be coming and working in partnership with us, a private developer. So it's, what I think the major cost will be in our doing these feasibility studies and making,
Well, yeah, even though
and
I'm
then
thinking the transfer of the land, I mean, this is all
Well,
time
that's
and
legal
expense,
fees and-
and,
yes,
it doesn't,
that's
it's
true.
not free.
No, I understand that. I just don't want people to think, though,
Right, the cost
that
of the house,
the whole project would be borne by the town. Because ultimately, I don't think it will be.
I think that's something we would need to investigate a
That's
little
something-
further.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of
court.
the things that you didn't address is a timeline.
Is a what?
I'm sorry, we can,
Timeline. If we got started on it as soon as possible, when would we get to the place where we can decide to do something?
Do we have agreement on the goal? If so, we can move very quickly.
yeah.
The goal building is the,
Court, I know. Okay, Court?
And then when he's done, I'd like to speak, Kate, after Court.
Okay, yes, thank you.
That's David.
Yeah.
40 Orchard Acres and Planning Board Chair. So the question was asked, what's the
Court,
rule
we
of thumb?
can't really hear
Can't
you.
hear you.
You're breaking up.
Okay. Okay, here is this a little bit better? I'll get back from my microphone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So, Port Herschelman, 41 Orchard Acres and Planning Board Chair. So last night we had our planning board meeting, and Eric Adams, who is part of the planning board and a builder familiar with building in Carlisle, kind of came up with a rule of thumb estimate that he would recommend we use. And his estimate was $1,000 a square foot. And so if you do some rough calculations, that would put the update somewhere between $4 and $6 million total. At our last joint land use summit, we talked about having all of the boards and committees kind of consider the costs, the long-term costs of what we're proposing going forward. And so what I think we're asking for is to sponsor the funding for this study for a project that's just not viable. And so that was a rule of thumb that was put out as part of the meeting, but maybe have another couple builders look at it. But before we even spend a dime, and certainly $50,000 of the taxpayers' money, I think we'd want to make sure that we really do have a viable project that we would want to go forward with. And I think that those rough numbers are easily obtainable before we go any further. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David?
Yep, thank you. I'm glad I came after Court. So Court, just a question, that $4 to $6 million, if you were to go greenfield and build something, it'd still be the same $1,000, right? But you'd have to acquire the land, I guess?
Well, so I'm not a builder, but I have family members who are, and generally speaking, new construction is less expensive than renovation.
Okay, good. So Julie, and thanks for the thoroughness as usual, but I mean, I kind of echo Court, and I guess I would say, you posed many layers of what I would consider to be go, no go, gates. Like if you went to the state, and it's pretty clear you're not going to qualify to the 2,400 square foot carve out. So if you went to the state for a 97 waiver and they say no, like, what does that mean? Is that like a whole big deal? Like, what I'm trying to get at is, rather than spend 50,000, can we figure out what the real showstopper things are and get some cheapo study that at least identifies whether we're at a showstopper? Because then we don't need to spend any more money, and then decide. Because it sounds like, now building on what Travis said, that before we embark on this is not a Springtown meeting 24th thing. This is a consensus building, and then next year thing, if at all, right? Is what it sounds like to me. So I'm curious, and Julie, what your feeling is about de-scoping that and just doing the bare minimum things to identify possible no-goes that would just end the project right there.
I don't know what to answer there. So that's what we're trying to find out. What are the showstoppers and the no-goes? So sometimes when we bring these projects, you want to know, not you, David, but the whole board in town wants to know, what are all the steps so that we can approve this. We're trying to see if there's any willingness to do this. There's not many chances to do affordable housing in town that we control. I think for a small investment, we can see whether or not the town wants to do it, and then if you don't, then we move on to the next purpose until we run out of purposes for the building.
I would challenge you a little bit on that by saying that there are alternatives. If you think broader, we talk about accessory apartments. We could rezone areas and have other types of affordability rather than just this. So thinking broadly, I think, is important, because we need to figure out where we want to do affordable housing and how we want to do it. And this may or may not be the way we want to spend our money.
Right. So as someone who's trying to drive the capital planning for the town, then I would say, what purpose does this building have then? And that needs to be identified quickly. Otherwise, we're wasting money.
And that's why I would.
There's a lot of money wasted in not doing anything as well.
Yeah.
So it has to be weighed. So if the answer to everything is going to be no, then I think the answer is the building doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think that because we have this building and because the usage of the bog has changed, right? It's now it's a new open question for us as a town, what we might do with that structure. And so I think spending a small amount of money to figure out whether some kind of community housing in that space is possible, and what does possible mean? I mean, that's what you want somebody to help us figure out, right? I think that is an important investment to make, because otherwise we're going to have another building that is the town's responsibility, because either it no longer gets used for any kind of housing for anybody, right? And we might use it for storage, or it needs to come out of the Conscom's hands and be in the town's hands to figure out what we want to do with it. We don't want to have it sit like we have some other structures in town, right?
Correct.
So we need to figure out what is it that's possible without spending, money that's not well, spending the money well to figure that out.
And that's the question, Barney. And so how do you get to that quickly, so we're not spending a lot of resources, going through a lot of exercises to spend money only to get to an end that says, oh, we're going to get rid of it or do something else, And so that's kind of what David was saying, and I think, I'd like to figure out how we can get there as fast as possible.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a reasonable thing to ask our town planner and our town administrator, as well as our in-house design people, to single out the key questions that, as somebody's using the phrase, showstoppers. Whether that's doable, is that something we could do? And therefore and if we need to spend money to get those answers.
Well, I think showstopper would be cost, right, would be one.
No, see, to me,
No,
no,
you'd
that's
have
starting at
use?
the.
You'd have use, or what would you, what are,
See, I mean, I don't know whether, let's say here, you can throw out all kinds of possibilities. Let's say you could put 6 units of housing in there, and if we were gonna, sell have a developer come in and develop it, then what are the economics of that? I don't know what those are, and, how much would the town have to put in on the front end to make it possible for a developer to come in and turn it into something? Or maybe we don't want to go that route. We want to have the town own it, and maybe are we thinking about we get into, rental housing that's affordable housing, or workforce housing that's rental housing? I don't know what that might be, but that's why we want to have a better understanding of some of those options, what they might be, what they might cost, what are the economics of it. And if there are some key questions, like being able to move it out of whatever the right language was, Article 97.
Right, so that's, to me, that's something worth figuring out sooner than later. And then the alternative, as David asked, if we can't use the waiver, which I would be surprised if we could, is, we need to find some land to give back, to put back in Article 97, or funding. At least that's my, really quick and dirty read on how that works. So that would be a whole separate conversation.
Yeah.
A comment, correct me if I'm not getting this history right, that was made when we were touring this building with several designers was, this building has already been studied a ton, and there's 10, this is the 10th alternative discussed for, so all of the different things that it could be are already known. The designer was saying you just need to make a decision.
I think the alternatives committee study was just 10 or 11 alternatives for the cranberry bog, and so one of them is focusing on the house. Yeah, so
right.
Right, but back to what Travis said and what Court said. If the inbound condition is $1,000 a square foot, it doesn't matter. There's no use where you would spend that money. And no developer would either, right?
right, because at $5 million, that'd be $625,000 a unit, and how would you make an affordable unit out of that?
That's why.
Right, you're better off we just build units. If we want
And there may
affordable,
be
go spend that money.
more effective and affordable ways to subsidize housing rather than on a small project like this.
Yeah, but that's, I think, partly what.
that
Some of
is
those
part of what the answer
answer-
advisory study would
answers does for
look
you.
at. Like they'd try to figure out what could pencil out for us.
So I have Warren and John.
We have 3 online.
Oh, and 3 on Zoom. Okay, well, get to those people when I get to them. No. Oops.
Okay, Warren Lyman, 516 Cross Street again. Just want to address 2 of these potential showstoppers. One out of a long ago tour of the Bog House with one of our better-known local realtors, Laura B. And I said, what could we get for these apartments now, as is? And you would be astonished at what she told me. We don't need $1,000 a square foot to make something that is going to be livable. Probably the biggest limitation will be building codes and the building inspector saying, here's what minimum you can get away with to make these livable, and they will sell, they will rent. Maybe not sell, but they would rent. The other thing I want to address, and it's partly addressed in the document I gave you, is that Article 97 in the PPL, Public Lands Preservation Act, did not and could not take into account the special situation of our bog house. So you got to throw some of their silly little limits away and rethink it. The one about this, what is it, 2,500 square feet, for example, you could maybe argue it on the fact that it doesn't cover our situation. It just doesn't fit. But there is, in my document, a way to avoid it and get down the land that might have to be set aside to a very minimum of the equivalent of 4 parking spaces. Everything else can be covered by easements. The land that is needed around the bog house for access, utilities like electricity, water, septic, all of those can get transferred for use through easements, not the transfer of the land. And just so you know it, this has happened a number of times for town conservation land, and even today, we have 2 lands, one including the bog house, that have septic systems on conservation land. So what I'm saying is, don't just read the thing. Look at an alternative, and I think that if you went to the state with a proposed plan, this would help you see if you had initially one of these showstoppers on it. Put together a simple plan saying, here's what we're thinking, and here's how we would best fit into your regulation. And yes, we're going to meet the land limit, and we're going to make this. We just have we need a little wiggle room here, and we're requesting a waiver. And the last thing you want to do is try and justify it by an analysis of alternatives. That's a document you don't want to write. So what I'm saying is, there are ways to get this done, and there are ways to get it done cheaper than $1,000 a square foot. Thank you.
John Ballantyne, still 268 Fifth Street. Since I worked with Warren on the Cranberry Bogs Alternative Committee and also the whole drafting of the Alternative 10, which was the bog house conversion of apartments, and also helped draft the memo to the Conservation Commission for the Housing Trust. We did do our due diligence in talking to several architects and people who would convert historic buildings. So we ought to be very careful in throwing around $1,000 per square foot numbers. And I just respectfully disagree with those numbers. I mean, we know Eric does really beautiful high-end work, but I've talked to several people on that, and we used an estimate of around $500 per square foot would be pretty easy to do, and coming in at around $3 million or under $3 million, as Warren said, is certainly possible. And then the market value there is, on a cost-benefit basis, really works out. But again, you've got to do your next stage of phasing it through, go through it, and say, here's a reasonable cost estimates. We know they're good people that can do it. They need a design, a schematic design, and all the other things, and then say, okay, here's what it's going to cost, and then how do you structure it? So I think we just, throwing numbers out like that, we got to be very careful and kind of go back and say, okay, here's what it is, and this can make it work. And so I just don't want $1,000 to be the, that's a high-end fire station, I think.
10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Maureen?
Right.
I think I agree with John and Barney and most of you. I viewed that house. It is a beautiful house. I know that it's really important that we have affordable housing throughout the state, and Carlisle should be a part of that. I'm sorry, I live at 575 South Street. That house could be easily used for workforce housing. It could be used for apartments. And the only way that we can figure it out is if we do our due diligence and spend a little money to find out what's the best thing for Carlisle. So I would support spending the money to make good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. No, I took it down. Thank you. All right. So that was the,
Well, and let me throw just one other piece of information in here. I mean, this, this conversation about doing a study of the Bog House came up probably in, I don't know, early January, which is how we ended up with a sort of a placeholder, you know, as a CPA article for the study of the Bog House. And over the course of the last couple months, I have, along with the CPC committee, looked at whether, and also in talking with Kate as chair of the Housing Trust, is there a way to use CPA money to do the initial architectural feasibility study? And so the thinking, the current proposal on the table before the CPC is to allocate money to the CPC administrative fund, and I can go into more of an explanation about that if it's relevant, but that we could put $20,000 into the administrative fund, which is separate from those 4 buckets of funding, and that would be used to cover the cost of this first study. Now, it may be we don't want to tie it specifically to an architectural feasibility study. I think that's more your role, Julie, to figure out what's the best way, if we have those funds, to get the information that we're talking about in order to be able to make you know, a decision down the road about what we actually want to do with the house. But that's currently going to be, that's supported by the CPC, and that's currently going to be part of the recommendation that goes to town meeting.
I'm going to transition to...
Yeah. May I make a quick comment for ESC?
Christina?
Yes. Yes, just 2 moments.
Sure.
Sorry, thanks. Just a reminder from ESC's perspective, a reuse, as a rule anyways, the reuse of a structure is much more environmentally sustainable than constructing a new structure from scratch. So I just wanted to say that, just as a reminder. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm going to try and put some budget stuff in context for the next 5 minutes to include.
I think the MFC
Oh, sorry.
should adjourn at this point.
Thank you.
Okay.
So my
Well, you didn't get
understanding
your
is-
question answered, but
Well,
You're not going to do it.
We're taking it under
proposed, and
consideration.
Eventually, they'll be answered. My understanding is that, at least in the near term, we, and I'm not sure exactly who the we is, will be maintaining the building to some minimal level
yes.
until definitive plans are made.
Assuming the warrant article that we discussed earlier at town meeting gets passed, the Conscom 26.5 or whatever that is, right? Because that includes the 10,000 for minimal Bog House repairs.
Yes.
Yes, and that could go to the MFC article or
Yeah.
either one.
Yeah, but just,
So 5 minutes of context. Julie's here for the GIS.
Stay here?
It's for.
Sit.
So let me start with the warrant articles.
Wait.
baby
Okay,
crying.
so the financial warrant articles that you have heard so far, so the OPEB actuarial study, which was discussed actually during the financial statement presentation, is $3,000. That's an annual warrant article.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Ryan, could you get me where I need to be in our packet?
It's not in the,
Or it's not in the, or what are we on? Oh,
it's in
you've
the
got
budget
something up here.
documents, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, got it. We're starting with the number 6 item at the top.
I'm trying to be cognizant of Julie's time here. So the
Okay.
the
We're gonna go to the GIS project.
The warrant articles that are cost money are the OPEB study, the GIS 3-year investment, which Julie discussed at length, and she's here to answer any questions if you have any on that.
Okay.
And we discussed tonight the Bog House repairs article, which has seemingly turned into a maintenance and Bog House repairs article for 26.5, you said?
No, it was 30.
no, was it? No, it's 26.
26.5?
I'll fix it later.
Yeah.
So those are the three. Before Julie goes, does anyone have any questions about the GIS study? The information was put in your packet. She presented the strategic plan. This is a single warrant article to go in front of voters. I just want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the information you've received so far.
I have one question, Ryan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Thank you. In the budget, I'm driving now, so I can't cite it, but there's the total cost, which is low in the next 2 years and then higher in the third year. And then there's some like red or something's in red already budgeted. So the already, is the warrant article asking for the whole thing, or like the conscom, the delta between the total and something that's already budgeted?
Are you talking about the GIS?
Yes, GIS, yes. There's a chart in her
Yeah.
presentation.
Right.
There's actually two charts that show those numbers.
It's 45 for 3 years.
Right. Yeah, I think so. So it's a great question. And the warrant article is asking for 45. And the chart here is to give a sense of like what the all-in costs are. Some of them are already part of current contracts that we have budgeted currently. So there is a delta between like what that 45 and like what we think we might actually spend. But the 45 would be like the 15 per year is like a real number of like once those contracts are done and we have new contracts and we still have the annual. Like,
so it's the delta. That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
It's the difference. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
The warrant article is requesting the full amount because when we put the placeholder in, we hadn't like specifically estimated out some of these costs. And so there is some wiggle room there. But after we're done with our current contracts and we have to enter into new contracts and we still have the same ongoing costs that are identified here, the annual cost might be closer to the 15,000 that's, you know, and if we look at different staffing scenarios, it could even be more than that. But this is to give you a sense of what the actual costs are.
I wanted to ask you about that, the staffing costs, you know, and you had a chart where you had a bunch of different options, and I know you're thinking through that. What is your thinking at the moment as to how to best run this going forward?
So I think that it's a little bit of a lot of things, right? So we have in-house staff who have experience using ArcMap. We have some in-house staff who could be trained on using devices out in the field and doing, it's pretty easy. The devices are not expensive. We have the potential to share services with a neighboring community that we need to explore further, but that's something that's on the table. The way that, I don't know if you read the whole strategic plan, but Adam kind of outlined like different roles that different staff would have. And I think like a lot depends on like what kinds of requests we're getting and what the demands are, like as people see what the site can do and, you know, have more and more ideas for what they want. We would have to like set up some parameters for how to manage those requests coming in and then see how it's impacting current staffing levels. And the town would have to decide, like, do we need to add somebody? Do we need to like get some part-time hours with another community? So it's uncertain at this point. I think that it's really hard to know. It's pretty incipient. I haven't had like a ton of requests for things yet, but you know, in my prior jobs, I used to have a lot of requests, and you know, those were bigger towns and you know, private engineering firms. So I do think the potential is there when people see what this can do, that there could be a lot of different needs or requests that are made, and then the town would have to decide whether that's something we're absorbing into current staffing or are we adding somebody. Some of the new staff that are being hired in town hall, they come with like some experience, and so there's benefits there. I think we have a lot in town hall right now that can be leveraged, but it's hard to speak to the future.
Do you see in the future it kind of rolling up to? I look at like Google and I think of, well, the Mass GIS, you know, they're doing it at a state level of parcels and stuff. I mean, is this eventually going to?
Where do you think they get those?
Is that where?
Yeah.
Okay, well then.
We're
that's
doing your
good.
work.
I didn't know, okay. So
Yeah.
we're paying for it and then giving it to them and
So
then,
yeah, it's a requirement of the state, and then it actually unlocks funding opportunities for public safety. Yeah, but so the part of the contracts that we have now were to like bring our parcels up to date because they were a couple years behind, and then we have ongoing parcel updates for the next couple years already budgeted for, and so that's something we would need to continue to do.
we sell them our data?
It's funny how similar some of the questions that you guys ask are to questions that the planning board asks.
The
But yeah,
planning board are very keen on monetizing this whole thing.
yeah.
And it ain't
It's our
happening.
data. I mean, we should get paid for it. All right, well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
No, they're great, like interesting questions for sure. But
So I promise this is building to something that makes sense. So the CPC articles, again, while Julie's here for just one more minute, that were discussed tonight. So the Bog House study fits in the $30,000 admin bucket request, which also includes some needs for CPA funding plus an assistant's salary. The $56,000 you heard about tonight from Conscom Cranberry Bog Watershed Analysis Management Plan, which is part of the grand bargain that was made at the Cranberry Bog. $50,000 for the Council on Aging Rental Assistance Program. The Benfield doors, which you heard about, we still owe you a better cost estimate, which is in works and hopefully done next week for fixing the ADA or the accessibility of Benfield's doors. That's a housing request under CPC. And then, although it says Greeno watershed analysis, there is funding that was done for the Greeno Dam that's going to be returned. So they wanted to use some of that $30,000 in order to do a watershed analysis similar to the one that's being done at the Cranberry Bog, but you can't quite do it that way. So this will come as a new article, but not really new funding if you factor in what's being returned. So these are the major presentations. The one other thing from warrant articles that you would want to discuss, I think, is the amenities building, which I learned tonight via email has been pulled for discussion study. There might be a study cost, but that will not be part of the FY25 budget.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Unless you want to stay.
I mean, is that all? It was too easy.
Thank you. No, it's great.
I discovered by using the GIS that my neighbor's driveway goes over my land.
GIS is it's representational in nature.
May not be accurate. Yeah. We have to get a survey.
Did you see the disclaimer?
Yeah.
Read the disclaimer.
Well, okay.
It
It looks like it's on
It
my
might be
land.
true, but it also might not be true.
Yeah,
So
well,
as I said, this was moving towards something. So the
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So the budget calendar has been updated. Why am I moving you towards this particular document? So tonight we are discussing and getting pieces of information as you need to make decisions. The 26th, which is your next meeting, we're calling a deliberative meeting. We're inviting the FinCom if you want it. You should get results from further FinCom analysis, but decisions on the operating budget, the capital budget, and these warrant articles is necessary. So I wanted to call that to your attention so that you could have us gather any information you need or invite anybody you need for final information pieces. And we're trying to keep that agenda as open as possible so that discussion can be long, rich, and robust. Because there will be, you will have a meeting in Seoul, the FinCom, on the 2nd to present this information to the public. We're going to invite the public heavy to that meeting on the 26th as well to get public input. And then you need to finalize and sign the town meeting warrant on April 9th. So you have 2 real meetings left of budget decisions.
I have a quick comment.
Yes.
Don't mind. So the public budget hearing on April 2nd, that is, you're saying that's a joint select board FinCom, or is that just a FinCom?
FinCom does that, and that's a
know
placeholder. They
they do.
haven't scheduled it yet.
Oh, okay, because this is just a general comment, and it, we can take it up at the next meeting, but I just want to get it out there. So, at the last town meeting, one of the things we tried to do was the info session at the beginning. I know that we've got now a committee that's looking into, how we run town meeting, but I'm thinking whether we might want to consider having some kind of a community forum or community meeting before town meeting about some of the bigger things that might be coming up at town meeting. And we may not get much turnout, I don't know. But I think it would be I think we should think about whether we might want to do something like that, particularly if we push it being joining us remotely and being able to participate remotely, ask questions, whatever. So, for instance, something like it may not be the Bog House, but maybe it's about the police station. Right, we're going to and I know they're doing open houses, et cetera, but we might want to think about pulling out the kind of significant decisions that need to be made at town meeting to focus on as some kind of a public community meeting sponsored by the select board. So just something to think about.
And speaking of things to think about, the town meeting warrant mailing.
Yes. We have to make a decision. We have to fish or cut bait on this one.
So this matters because of scheduling. So as part of this, we need to make sure that we're ready to print. If it's a postcard, we can send it out earlier and really hammer people with the QR and update online. If it's a mailing, then that just takes more time. We'll still try to, hammer's the wrong word, but have people get information and access it online to include presentations and reports, et cetera. And the mailed warrant would also have a QR code with all the same accessibility. So the real difference is the balance between history, tradition, and accessibility, and cost. So we outlined it Gretchen helped me put this together. The full book mailing is around $4,000, and the postcard option is $1,400. So this would be per meeting.
So it's
a little
about
bit
a
cheaper.
is it $2,000 difference? 2,500? What was it?
25, yeah.
2,500. Yeah.
And that's per town meeting. So
It's 2 per year.
Yeah.
That's about 5,000 a year.
When we used the postcard for the last meeting, we got some feedback. I don't remember how broad it was. I do remember there were some specific comments that people were not happy that they hadn't received the book in the mail. Anybody remember how much feedback we got?
I think John was one of them, that he likes to write in it, at home, and bring his notes to the meeting. But that, excuse me, this is not an either or. Even if we did the postcard, there would be some print booklets available, so that those people who really need that, who want that, can call. And I think we even talked about.
We offered that last fall, though, too.
Actually directly delivered to their house, so they don't even have to come and get it.
Yeah, I'll
There
deliver
would be
it.
some at the
Or mail
library,
it.
some at Fern's.
It's less expensive to hand deliver for the number of people who would want to ask.
Yeah.
For that.
Listen, I'm not arguing for mailing the booklet I actually would love to have us not do that for all kinds of reasons. But I do want to I want us to remind ourselves of the feedback we got, and because we offered those options last fall when we went to the postcard, and we may not, maybe we didn't, maybe now that people have had the experience of getting to town meeting that wanted a book and didn't get one, maybe they will take advantage of those things this time around. Because I'm in favor of just doing the postcard myself.
I think as long as the postcard is well laid out, and that it's the QR code's over here, but there's a lot of information about how you can get the booklet if that's what you want. Because I think it wasn't as somehow, I don't remember it being
As publicized?
as publicized or as obvious on that. Because
Will the postcard say if you want it delivered, we will deliver it, or
Yeah.
will not say that?
It did last year as well.
It did.
it did, but I think the layout was,
If you call, like a number, you can
It was
call it.
Jen's number. Yep.
Did Gretchen know that when we,
Yeah, my
did
cell phone.
Gretchen know that when we hired her?
I think she knows.
You can put my cell phone and I will bring it to your house.
Yeah.
You can talk about the warrants.
Yeah. Okay,
David?
let's have, yeah.
Does he have any comments?
David, you have any comments?
No, I prefer the postcard as well.
Okay, so let's have a motion, and so that it's crystal clear.
Do we have a motion in the packet or no?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I move that we send a postcard to the usual list to announce the Springtown meeting with information about how people may get a hard copy if they would like to have one.
So second?
That was very
Second.
wordy.
Yes, great. We're going to do roll call.
Arnold, I.
I think.
Modell, aye.
Reed, aye.
Snell, aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
All right, quick operating budget update, as quick as you want it to be. The major revenue recommendations, this comes from the Select Board and FinCom's recommendation for solving the deficit and trying to get all budgets within the 3% guideline.
That was today.
So revenue recommendations include using 50,000 of ambulance receipts, a pending decision on increasing transfer station stickers, which would result in a conservative $20,000 increase. That is not approved and is up for public discussion. And then a variety of expense recommendations that help get closer to 3% from all departments, take into account that there are some things that we just can't cut. And I can show you where all the departments are at if you want. So the total of the quote unquote approved or not is around 75,000 to 80,000. So conservation, I had it at 10,000. They kind of tentatively agreed to give back 16 tonight, so that would increase by 6, which is why I'm saying around 80. So the remainder to get to 3% average tax bill increase is 120,000, knowing that we have not heard from the schools at all yet.
Yeah.
So getting there.
All right, I was at the library trustees today, and they were thinking about reducing their maintenance line by the 3776.
And Martha sent that to me, so this is, just wanted to talk to her, but I think is confirmed.
Okay.
Excuse me, quick question. So the ones that are approved, are these departments then at a 3% increase in terms of their budget from last year to this FY '25, or this is just the amount they said they could reduce?
This is the response to have level services as close to 3% as possible.
Okay.
So there's still a little more cut room if you want.
I should also add, most people know this, I think. Tomorrow is the school committee meeting. They're going to present, I believe they're going to present their plan to get, I'm hoping it's to get to 3%, but whatever it is, they're going to present. If you haven't gotten the invitation from Mary Reagan, I think you can get on the website, but you can listen in. We're not calling a meeting, but you may want to listen in because that's, the biggest piece left, right? I plan to be, listening. I don't know, Ryan, do you have any sense from your conversations with Jim about how they're doing on that?
Yeah, they asked for space. They understand the guideline and said they would participate in that guideline. So I feel confident that they are going through the same exercise that the town is, trying to get as close as possible.
Yeah, that's my sense as well. So, okay, so stay tuned on that.
So you've seen this before. Just one quick update. So the white or the clear is free cash expenditure, for lack of a better explanation. Red is Chapter 90, yellow is debt, and coral is the things that are being bundled into an MFC article. One change in the MFC article, so they were going to go ahead and update the town fob entry system using a key card, but decided through a pretty good deliberation that was just coming out of nowhere. It needed to be prioritized, so it's going on the capital plan for FY25. And then if you look here on the right, this would turn into your warrant articles, so a $650,700 for capital, the debt article for the engine 3 replacement, the MFC article, which would be a bundle of $510,000, and then the road maintenance from Chapter 90, which end up being more like $400,000 if the governor's proposal goes through.
Ryan, just to refresh my memory, did we talk about, and we haven't gone back to this in a while, but for road maintenance, what are we thinking? It's 500,000 to keep the kind of level where we are right now?
Correct. And we have about 750,000 in, it's not extra, but in unspent Chapter 90. So we feel like we can hit that marker in a plan we're going to present to you for the next 2 years, and then present a longer-term plan that will meld into FY26 and beyond in the capital plan. And that's coming to you in 2 or 3 meetings. All right, now I'm ready to really confuse you. So one of the things that, but in a good way, one of the things that Zach was talking about was unspent bond proceeds. This was one of the recommendations. Kelly spent a tremendous amount of time weeding all of this out. So what happened was, very simply, we borrowed money and then we didn't spend it all. So we went ahead and borrowed the total amount for a project, but then the project came in under. So a good problem. So anything under $50,000 can be used, and there's a lot of Mass General law and a lot of detail, but essentially can be used to pay off debt. So what we're going to do this year is put all of these, if you agree and vote on it, towards debt, and that will close to free cash. So you'll end up getting, you remember when he talked about miscellaneous revenue and other things that added to our free cash total. This will be one of those things for FY24 closure. On the left side, you see that a school project for the wastewater treatment plant saw $101,000 unspent. So the way this needs to happen is it becomes part of a warrant article in order to fund a project of similar lifespan. So the best example in the capital plan is the wastewater treatment request of $143,000. So we can roll this into the capital article, defer the costs of that, and that'll reduce the overall spend. So we'll just give Kelly credit. She found 200 grand for you.
Woohoo!
Hey.
Well done.
So that leads into
It's our money.
your money, just giving it back to you and celebrating it.
Well,
Yeah.
No, but it's figuring out it's there and
It's
how
finding
we
the
can
quarters
use it.
and the couch cushions.
So this is the spend plan. You're getting used to this little chart, but our total reserves, which you can see is remarkably close to what Zach talked about in the I can't remember the name now, but the money that isn't accounted for. I said that terribly. Unassigned fund balance. The target is 12% reserves in this town. The reserve over target, meaning what you have available, is 1.5 over your 12%. This budget proposes a 100%, $100,000 operating budget, investment of free cash, 1.1 million in capital plan, and then 74.5. So those are all the different articles and things I showed you in the previous charts for a total use of 1285.
Still leaves 300K.
So that leaves you a balance, not including what I just showed you on those bond proceeds charts, of around 300 to 500,000 over your 12% if you were to fund everything in this budget. So what the finance team is recommending is you put that into a capital stabilization to offset future costs. And here is why. We've been working, thanks to Sandy and Bartholomew, on really firming up the borrow for some of the big projects. And this one right here is the police station. So assuming you wanted to do a 20-year borrow, which is a middle ground, that is a debt service of $266,000 in year one. So the year one impact for the average tax bill using today's tax rate would be $146, or a 0.85% increase on the average tax bill. So that would take a regular year, I'm just calling it that, a 3% increase, and make it 3.85. If you were to take 500,000, which you're putting away in capital stabilization this year, that borrow would go from 3 million to 2.5, and obviously reduce that percentage. Or you could use it to offset future capital and have this be the only thing above 3% if you went that route. And you can see it starts at 266,000, but it declines over those years, so you would slowly gain back your average tax bill or create capacity for adding in other projects.
I missed that. 266, it was like 2 million. Oh, 266 on the.
It's the debt service,
okay.
yep.
The project's 2920. Or no, is that?
Yeah, what's the, yeah,
I
good
thought-
question.
Is that the police station?
That's the police station, yep. So we have one of these for the fire truck, and we have one of these for the.
So Ryan, I can't see the numbers, but Ryan,
Yep.
We can hear you.
Ryan,
Yes, sir.
I'm back in Carlisle, so it's sketchy. But in reality, if you didn't have the stabilization fund, you could still, it could all flow to free cash, and you could use free cash for the same purpose, right?
Correct.
So tell me the advantages of putting it in a lockbox versus just having that flexibility.
The advantage is demonstrating a public plan for controlling long-term costs while supporting large projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Good answer. That's a really good answer.
So the remaining questions for your next meeting, your deliberation, are finalizing the operating budget and the deficit in order to get near or at your guideline of 3% tax increase. To really vet if you support all of the capital articles. As you can see, that turns into real dollars that you may or may not need for other projects. And then the warrant articles. So what information and what people do you need to talk to feel comfortable about putting all of that on a final warrant and signing it? Just because you have the deliberation time and you have to sign the final warrant doesn't mean you don't have further time to recommend or not these articles. So if you want to put them on but then still consider whether or not you're going to support them, you have that option as well. And then you will see between now and the 26th a 95% draft of the town meeting warrant, so you can see it all laid out. Another couple decisions, because I want to be transparent, is the COLA decision. So we have to print the town wage and class plan, and that is built off of the COLA, whether it's at, right now what's built in at 2.25%, if that's going to go to 2%, or you're going to make another solution or decision. And the other thing is this budget also includes a 1% increase on the health insurance. So an update, the health insurance benefit. So an update on that, the IAC, which is your group that was building a recommendation, voted to not support a plan change, which means our health insurance increase will be 8.95%. The plan change would have increased deductibles and been a burden on our employees, but it would reduce the overall cost to 5.5% rather than the 8.95%. So that is a big cost and a big driver of the future of our budget. We also currently tie retirees and active employees together. So I think the board needs to make a decision on whether or not it's going to go with the current plan, whether or not it still supports an increase of the insurance splits, or what the long-term plan is there, and whether or not to continue to tether retirees to active employees. So they're all levers within that health insurance line item to control long-term costs or not. They also have major implications on retention and care for employees as well, so not a small decision.
Just quick question. So currently, the current operating budget has us going up, the town picking up an additional 1% share of the health insurance cost, correct?
Correct.
It's built in right now.
Yes.
Okay.
That costs $15,000, right?
The budget line is 1.5 million, so just rough math, it's 15,000, but it's really like 13 and change.
Okay. Okay.
So it's, in certain respects, small money now. However, I'm worried about the future and about future. And what I'm also worried about is that we may not have control over the program later, that actually the insurance companies will be the ones that are going to increase those deductibles and increase our insurance costs as well. You know, so going forward, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, obviously, but it doesn't look good. So we may not be able to do this next year. I think it's
pick up
important.
an additional share of the.
Yeah. It may get increasingly difficult.
Yeah, a couple levers in there is to really consider retirees and where they fall in the spectrum. So the difference between an active and a retiree is the active still pay deductibles, whereas retirees pay into Medicare. So it's still a cost to pay into Medicare, but it is cheaper and not as expensive as deductibles. So some towns split. They have an active cost and a retiree cost. That would not fundamentally change the budget, but over time it would curve some growth. And then perhaps considering if you are going to continue to increase the percentage up to comps, making a plan change part of it in the future, as Kate suggested. So we will continue to march if these things happen as a way you can control that cost.
When do we need to make this decision?
With the operating budget.
The operating, so I just hope people will think about it very carefully so that when we get, I think it's before the April 2nd then, it's March 26th meeting, that we really should be prepared.
Yeah, FinCom's gonna ask, do you want that to be part of your cut scenario or not?
Yeah.
To get to 3%, so.
I'm sorry, say that again? Part of,
Their cut scenario to get to 3%.
includes, do we want it to include,
Do we not want to increase it by 15,000?
oh, do we still want it to include the 1%? Ah, gotcha, okay. All right.
I'm sorry, I have a little trouble following this. You're talking about the 1% where we take more share of the health
Yes.
package? Is that what we're discussing? Okay.
Yeah,
And it's how much a year?
around 15.
What's the one?
Less than 15K.
15K to move the needle 1 more %.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And just quick question on the COLA. So say that again, you said we're currently planning for 2.25%?
That's what's built into the budget.
That's what's built into the current, okay. And what was and then your question about that was, do we want to change that?
Correct. So we need to build the wage class plan, so we need to
Right.
know what the
Yeah.
percentage
Right.
would be.
Yeah.
And,
Well, can I just, before you ask the
Yeah.
next question, I want to say, we have a couple of contracts where they're on town-wide COLA, but with a floor of 2.25, right? So I wouldn't want to go lower than that, but
Got
I
it.
don't necessarily have to go higher than that.
Got it. Okay.
And is this a negotiation year for CPS?
Next year.
Next year.
Next year, okay, thank you. And so they're on a 2.25 as well, right?
Actually, I think
They're on a 2.
they're on a 2 for this year.
On a 2 for this year, okay. All right, thanks.
All right. That is what's currently in the FinCom's court, and then coming back to you on the 26th.
I would like
Well, you
more
said-
information
yeah.
on the, on this, pulling the retirees out of separating the retirees from the active employees, but that's something I can just do individually.
I wrote that down too.
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's important.
I'd like
And-
to know more about
And
that.
there's
Okay.
2 tiers of retirees.
Yes.
There's the ones that are already on Medicare and the ones that are not.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah, so I would,
so-
yeah, that would be helpful to have some more information on that, Ryan.
Maybe just in writing so that they
Yeah.
can see it beforehand. And David, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just, I heard there was like a discretionary piece to whether we would have the FinCom come in and have a joint meeting. There's no we should do that, right? We should tell them we want them to come in, right? For the 26th?
Yeah.
I think
they
you
were
might have
planning-
been mixing it up with my question, David, about the public budget hearing that FinCom is going to do. And I was
Oh, okay.
asking if that was a joint meeting. So, yeah, that's separate.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Going to have Gretchen publicize heavily that there's going to be deliberation about the budget at the meeting on the 26th to invite the public to participate, in case you want to hear from them.
Yeah.
You're not here.
Great.
I will be here virtually.
Are you going to run the meeting? Are you going to be the Zoom leader?
I'll be the Zoom later,
Yeah.
You will? Okay.
Well, all right. It's
assuming they have internet.
It's 10 minutes to 10.
Bliss.
We haven't, are there any other questions on the budget and town meeting review? Because we really need to get to the TA report and the liaison reports and the minutes. And the okay. Oh,
Hey,
there he is.
David.
Yes, David's back.
Welcome back.
2 round trips to Lancaster.
Oh, Lordy.
Now,
Play soccer out there.
well, usually we have a carpool and it all went away. I'm the only driver, so
Okay,
thank you for your patience.
Good guy.
all right.
All right, update. So the employee furniture and expansion will continue phase 2 in April. We have a date, April 18th. So you'll see some scheduling of at least a partial town hall closure. It won't be the whole building. The good news is this came in under the ARPA budget, so we'll be able to return a couple $1,000s to ARPA. For human resource updates, Juniper Friedman began this week, stabilizing the long vacant position, assisting the Historical Commission, the CPC, and the MFC. So we're still working on training, but she's adjusting well to all things Carlisle. It's a difficult position. There's a lot of different nuance between the three boards, so it'll take a little time, but we're going to get there. Regret to report that Mary Hopkins resigned from her position as a conservation assistant. So we'll be advertising this vacancy. We thank Mary for her service, and I'm going to have a few different options for the CONSCOM in the town to consider, to include maybe a temporary hire while we consider some longer term approaches. We did send an offer to a heavy equipment operator. He has not accepted it yet, but we are hopeful to fill that last HE position. And then I'm continuing to serve on the CCRHS Unit A negotiation team. I think it's going well. It's pretty amicable negotiation as we work through some of the long-term changes in the contract. All right, I think we talked about the budget. I don't see anything that I missed there. The DPW plow truck, so some decent news here. I reported last time that we had tried to procure the truck. They told us it would take 4 years and we could pay more for it. We said that's not a great deal. So Jim found a 2023 option from a state bid list member. It was $16,000 more, but far less than we would pay with 4 years of increases. So the FinCom approved an emergency transfer in order to cover that cost, and we were able to procure that truck. So we should see it in September. You'll see in the packet, we received $253,121.20 for Chapter 90 in FY25. This is the normal increase that was part of the 2-year bill passed last year. The governor has also included another version of the Fair Share Act that gave us another $171,000 last year. So we're hoping that goes through, which would bring our total to closer to carry the $420.
So you were, I was driving when you were talking about that Chapter 90 sort of extra money and the road maintenance project. So you're basically rolling that surplus into your multi-year plan for road maintenance, essentially?
Yeah, we're going to seek a 2-year definitive approval from you to procure it, and then work with you on a 5 to 10-year plan.
Right, along the lines of what was recommended by that consulting study.
So that is the base, and then Jim is adding what we're calling equity roads, or roads that get a lot of complaints for you to consider, that are within the scope of the...
Equity, I like that. Who came up with that term? That's great.
That's an interesting term.
It's the...
I would call it advocacy roads, man.
My kids don't like it, but the
I would
crappy
call it
roads...
squeaky wheel.
Squeaky wheel
That's what
roads,
advocacy
yeah.
is, right? Yeah.
Broken axle roads.
Yeah.
I regret that word. All right. Town meeting mailing, we made that decision.
Yes.
So I was able to go to school with several staff members. Did you read?
We read.
We read.
We read.
I read.
Kelly, were you there? Kelly hates reading. So I was able to go to Mrs. Morris's 3rd grade class and read Trusty Town Hall.
Yeah.
And Jim O'Shea called me out for not actually reading the book and trying to indoctrinate the students on taxes. And I didn't think that was true until I got the letters from the kids that were talking about how fun and interesting taxes are. So it worked. All right. The Garden Club is seeking several approvals from you. So they would like to use the town common for the annual plant sale on Saturday, May 18th from 10 to 2 o'clock. They will have tables, plants, tents, and native plant workshop. This has historically been supported by all town entities and is supported by FRS. Second, the club seeks permission to plant native perennials under the young trees planted in 2022. The Garden Club will pay for the plantings and plant them during an educational workshop at the plant sale. The project is called Soft Landings. If the native plants fail to thrive, the Garden Club promises to reseed the area. The circle of plants around the base of the tree will be 6 to 8, that should be 8 feet in diameter for the first year, kept away at knee-high length, and they will be given attention so that these young trees and the plants will thrive. So we thought you needed to approve both of these measures.
I have a question about this last one. Have they gotten approval from FRS? Because they need to have approval from them as well.
That is my understanding, yep.
That they have had approval from, not just for the town common, but for the planting.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want us to do the motion right now?
Yeah,
for
let's
these two?
do it.
I move to approve the request of the Carlisle Garden Club for use of the town common on Saturday, May 18th, 2024, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the Carlisle Garden
Hi,
Club
Julie, thank you.
annual
Bye, Kelly, thank
plant
you.
sale.
Quitters, right?
No.
Goodbye, you two. You
Yeah.
do a great job for our town. Thank you. I
Can you repeat
finished.
the motion?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Good. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
I move to approve the Carlisle Garden Club proposal to plant native perennials under the young trees on the town common.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, another support from local organizers are seeking from the board is for Race Amity Day. So this is something you approved traditionally to include a proclamation that was signed and posted in perpetuity for 2019. So the Race Amity Day celebration will be a fun educational event geared towards children and welcoming for adults. They'll have music, poetry, educational tables, and early act and others. There'll be a fun game called Blind Contour Look Closely, where two strangers sit across from each other, while one is drawing the other while not lifting their pencil and never looking down. This is supposed to help people see strangers and make, in a different light, and make connections. So it's bring your own picnic this year, but they're looking for approval for June 9th from 2 to 5. I wasn't able to make this year. I'm going to try to make it this year, but it sounded like it was a great event.
I move to approve the request of local organizers for use of town common Sunday, June 9th, 2024, from 2 to 5 p.m. for the Race Amity Day celebration.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous.
All right, procurement. The sprinkler system is awaiting final inspection, which is great news. The dog park will be put back out to bid. It's a smaller version that was approved by all permitting boards this week. It'll go out to bid. Corey Lighting. So you know that this bid exceeded expectations. So we are awarding the lighting contract to Barbizon and purchasing the equipment. We are engaging one of our house doctors to redesign the electrical, and we'll either put that out to bid or hire our own electrician to install. So we think this will be very close to the original appropriation, maybe a little bit over, but definitely less than what was bid.
So is there a lesson here that we should basically do this stuff ourselves? Now that we have house doctors and smart people who know how to do things, we shouldn't let consultants drive us. I mean, I'm being overly broad here, but some of these things where, you know, we pay somebody to do something that we can do ourselves, if we piece it out, right, and you have the house doctor plan it, we have more control, we can exhibit more cost control.
Yes. So
Okay.
that argument goes, it's a lot of upfront cost, but it might save you money in the long run.
I missed that, David. You're saying we want to use the house doctor?
Well, what I'm hearing, I guess I want to make sure I understood correctly. So, you know, the school came to us with their hair on fire and said, we got to have this. It's like dangerous, and the light bulbs and this and the ladders and, you know, all this panic last year. And I go, well, all right. So then we budgeted an amount, and then it turns out it was way more. So we kept at it. And now what I'm hearing is, okay, we've contracted with somebody to do something, and then we're using our house doctors and basically doing a redesign of what they told us and doing some ourselves and some vending out, and we think the total will be less. It'll be kind of back. So the lesson to me, if it is, if that's extrapolatable, right, is we shouldn't listen to what these experts tell us on these projects. We have house doctors. We should get our own analysis, and we should decide in that menu what we can do and what we need to parcel out.
You're saying use our own house doctors?
Yes, the house doctors that we now have assembled a team of house doctors, right? It's a question. I mean, I'm not merely making a statement. I'm just saying, is that a better model going forward for some of these projects?
I think, being on the MFC, I think that is, because I've seen that in action where we've, done projects that if you do it, you kind of don't have a plan and a well-engineered plan, and then all of a sudden, the cost goes skyrocketing.
Right.
And
Well, and you let somebody else who's maybe not as familiar with the situation, or maybe is not as good of like a contractor tells you what you need, but he looks at it a certain way, right? Whereas the house doctor have a dog in the fight, right? I mean, they're just looking at the project and saying, what's the best
The
approach?
house doctor may, I mean, the contractor may forget there are other components.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
you need to do drainage. Oh, I didn't think
Yeah,
about
yeah,
drainage.
right,
or
right,
I didn't
exactly,
think about,
yeah, right.
you know.
So, okay. So anyway, thank you.
To be fair to the school, I agree with that overall sentiment, but in this particular instance, the company that we're awarding the contract to for the equipment is perfectly capable of installing, and they do it for larger projects. So they bid it and would have held to that bid, which was under what we appropriated. However, the state would not let us use them because they do not have a DCAM certification. So normally they work under a bigger firm. They were not allowed to work under a bigger firm. So we have petitioned the state to say that they are really hosing small towns by not by making us do that. So it's costing us about 40 grand, a state law that is trying to protect us, that is hurting us. I think I can picture situations where it would help us, but in this one, it's not.
So is that something, for example, that we ought to be talking to Simon about? That sort of thing?
I have, and you should too. Getting rid of some of the bureaucracy of procurement would help small towns in that sense. It also exposes you a little bit, but we can talk about that. All right, speaking of procurement hurting us, so the Greeno Barn, we had to reject all bids received last week. So 2 bids far exceeded our funding capacity. 2 other bids, which were more sustainably focused and geared towards our project, were completed incorrectly and deemed unresponsive. So I'm just going to be blunt. When they were filling out the form, they didn't put zeros in all the spots. So
Is that another bureaucratic requirement?
yes. So part of it is we tried to really dial in some of the construction levels. So we're going to ease back on that and make the form a little easier to fill out and hit a different standard. So we're going to rebid this, and I think it's going to end up where we want it to be, but it's going to take another month. So recreation mowing and fur leasing contracts, those are out to bid and have seen a strong return. 2 signs on the rotaries. In town lands, you'll see are the No Mow May and the Carlisle Music Festival. Some upcoming discussion points. I'm going to be gone starting tomorrow until the 29th for military duty at Fort Bliss. Sandy will be the in-person town administrator if necessary. I still will have retained most of my authority, but the things I can't do in person, she will have, like HR. And then Chief Soros, who already has a ton of emergency responsibilities, will take the couple that I have during an emergency situation. The board will, and others who need the select board and town administrator will go through Gretchen's capable hands, and Aubrey will be back at the end of the month. Actually, her and I come back on the same day. Budget, we talked about. The other things that are coming up, climate leader and ESC work plans will be part of a special meeting on April 2nd. It'll just be your goals, my goals, and this ESC conversation about their work plan and climate leader, and that's all that's scheduled for that meeting.
I have a quick comment. Oh, go ahead.
Well, you actually said earlier that there was also going to be the budget stuff on there, and I was going to question it then, but I'm going to question it now then. The budget stuff really should have been on April 9th, and you have it, you wrote it in the budget
An off-cycle
line
meeting?
as April 2nd.
So that's the Finance Committee's public budget presentation.
April 2nd is, so they're having it on our same, as our.
It's just a placeholder. They haven't scheduled it yet.
Ah.
That was the date that they kind of talked about.
We're layering in an extra meeting, right?
Yeah, we're laying in, okay, so
Um,
that's, sorry, I'm getting.
Just quick comment on the special meeting, which we talked about at the last meeting. It came out of wanting to give more time to the goals, the select board goals, and then the town administrator's goals. In looking at the draft agenda, I understand that it's a good thing to be discussing the climate leader proposal with the sustainability committee, but I would just urge us to remember what drove us to have this meeting in the first place and make sure we really give the time to the goals discussion. And my suggestion would be, maybe what I suggest isn't the exact right way, but generally I think we as a board should do some work in advance of that conversation, looking at the select board goals, some way that we do some of our own kind of scoring, or how well did we do on this, or what's missing, what would you change, something where we're having to do some work ahead of time. And then similarly with the town administrator's goals, which we've talked about bringing back and really discussing, and we haven't, so I think if we had both of those documents with some direction from our chair, or chair and whomever else, about what we should be doing in advance, I think would be helpful. And I would, in reviewing that April 2nd agenda, if you think we need more time for that part, I would recommend we shrink the sustainability, which is down for an hour.
Well,
And
that
the-
was
the
part of the
goals are
goals.
down for an hour.
Yeah, but we got,
I know, we said we wanted to know more about, right.
sustainability goals, where
Right.
we realized that we really needed to talk to the ESC.
Yeah, but
So
but they want to present this this new proposal
they've been
about
told
being a leadership
that
community.
they can only-
Okay.
Yeah, that it's going to be, they can present it, and we will discuss it, but it has to be presented in the context of their goals.
Okay.
And our goals.
Okay.
For sustainability.
All right.
So, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
look, we can refine that time, and that is a draft thing, but.
I liked your idea though, Barney. If you can send out something
Yeah.
ahead of time, even sooner rather than later, it'd be helpful just to remind me, like, I guess I can look at the website and look at their goals, but I don't know.
With some
what do you want-
direction
how do
about
you want-
some direction about how do we want to try to approach that conversation? What we were starting to do was kind of just go down them in kind of a general, yeah, we did okay on this, yeah, we did, no, we haven't done that. I don't know if that's the most productive way to approach, trying to evaluate where we are.
I'll let you take the lead,
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Thanks a lot.
Leave it in your capable
okay.
hands.
That agenda
Certainly
and
will.
packet is ready to go already, so
Yes.
we can just post it and get it to you and then add some direction. All right, the fire station conceptual design will be coming back. Of course, it needs to take a little bit of a backseat during this current budget, but then we should ramp up again right as town meeting hits, so we can discuss. The main point is, do you want to put some caps on the RFQ this time in order to get a designer who's focused on, or knows what you want to focus on, I should say. The TSAC regulations, so they have been working on their regulations mostly around enforcement and stickers, to include a recommendation to increase the sticker price and to increase enforcement. So this is a document that was attached to the report. It is a very significant topic, in my opinion, that needs to be discussed and deliberated more than in just this couple minutes here. So we're sending it to you ahead of time so you can consider it. I would strongly recommend you read the enforcement piece, because it is what some would call a little bit more heavy-handed, but it does allow us to more equitably enforce the standard there and reduce some of the trash increase that's been happening. I didn't say that well, but
Increasing in cost.
increase in cost.
But, I was there the other day, and somebody had thrown textiles and right on top of the trash, and then as the worker there was putting the textiles in the thing, he realized that somebody had put a huge box in the paper recycle bin, and the box, when he pulled it out, was full of styrofoam and plastic. It's like,
You can't coach stupid.
I feel.
I'm telling you,
But the thing that I
people
find
should,
it maddening, because I spend a lot of time, I'm sure
too.
you all
Yeah,
do.
we do.
Carefully, separating all my stuff, and somebody who does this, I find
Yes, maddening.
very maddening and rude
it is.
and inconsiderate.
I agree, I totally agree, but what's the fix?
Penalty for it, they
Well-
wouldn't do it.
Well, the thing is, they do this when you turn your back. They don't, because.
Well, do they do it willfully or out of ignorance?
I don't
That's the
know whether-
question.
May I suggest that I know,
I know, but it's
see,
just-
that's why Ryan's saying this deserves conversation.
Yes.
It will be,
All right.
so.
So when are we
Right.
taking it up? You have a scheduled time to take it up?
TSAC wants to bring it up in your next meeting.
Okay.
We still have the budget
Okay,
stuff, so
all right.
we talk about it.
And this is the proposed
Yes.
regulation that we would be voting on at that
Please read
meeting?
it before the next meeting again.
Or at least discussing it if we're not ready to
And
vote.
if
Yeah,
you-
okay.
come back.
Yeah.
It does not include the proposal about the sticker at this point, right?
Well, this is
I
a
don't
policy.
think-
This is a policy. It
Right,
wouldn't, it
right,
wouldn't.
it's not the.
It does
doesn't-
where you have to affix it, and anyways, it's
Yeah,
a whole thing, and it's gonna be lively.
yeah.
So we talked about the road maintenance plan. The only thing I would call your attention to is we are recommending you have a public hearing about these plans as well, to get input from residents. So you can hear firsthand the equity roads.
To hear firsthand that their road is not going to be paved.
Some some staff recognition. So I'd like to acknowledge Chief Amendola and the Carlisle Police Department for their polar plunge. It was freezing. I was very uncomfortable just standing there. And then they jumped into 40-degree water. So the fire department participated, a lot of members of CPAC. I did not fully understand the event and have regrets. But they raised more than $6,500 for Special Olympics. Very cool event they're going to plan on doing next year. A lot of participation from our younger residents as well.
Yeah, a lot of students were there.
So just a great day.
Great.
Athena didn't jump in.
Did you jump? Did you jump?
She's supposed to be a water dog, I
I
guess.
thought, I just didn't have time to go. I would have jumped, but it was awfully cold.
I was sick.
Firefighter EMT Leif Hansen graduated last week from the Fire Academy with his Firefighter 1-2 certification. It's a 240-hour program. Brings a lot of experience and professionalism to our already solid department. So well done to Firefighter Hansen.
Okay.
On your upcoming dates, you don't have the 26th, but we are meeting on the 26th, right?
26, yes.
I wonder if March 29th, it turns out, is Good Friday. I'm just hoping that doesn't affect the caucus.
Is the caucus on a Friday night? No, that can't be right.
That's what
That
the
is
date-
right.
Yeah, that's the date.
Yeah,
We have a caucus on a Friday night.
yeah, it's odd.
That is weird.
Friday night and it's Good Friday.
Isn't it a time, isn't it
Yeah, I would-
based on a certain amount of time?
That should,
Yeah, but
Meeting
I'm
them
just
down like
wondering if,
that's not a great time to have a
I know.
caucus.
wondering if
That's a tough one.
if
Yeah.
she, Peggy took account of that. You know, she may have just counted backwards, but maybe she needs to.
Is there time to amend that? Because I think your participation will be down quite a bit.
I advise you to contact your elected official.
That's a good job for the chair, I think.
And it's also a good segue for our one of our ballot questions.
Okay.
Okay.
You'll do that, right? If we can move it, I suggest we move it.
Okay,
Okay, call Peggy.
right. You know, we didn't talk about the ballot questions in terms of the town clerk question, but at some point, I don't think we should do it tonight, but
No, not tonight.
we should talk about preparation for that.
Yeah. So that's the end of the TA report. Any more questions for Ryan, comments?
No. Have a good, congratulations. You'll be what? You'll be fully trained then? You're allowed to actually?
Be allowed to stay a sergeant major, yes.
Okay, all right, good.
Yeah.
You're doing this in Texas?
Fort Bliss, Texas.
Fort
Okay,
Bliss.
well.
Oh,
Beautiful
enjoy
downtown
it.
Fort Bliss.
It'll be warm.
It's in
It should be
March,
warm.
not
yeah.
August.
Yeah.
Who's gonna drive with the kids to hockey?
Hockey's done,
Okay,
thankfully. There's a little bit of a break, so.
very good.
Minutes? I had 2 emendations, but I think they probably hit your packet, hopefully, before you read them.
Okay.
I had just one small, where was it? Okay, let me see if I can find it.
While she's looking, I just, in the community input section, it makes it sound like the people were all reading one prepared statement, but there were several people doing different things, right?
Yeah.
There was, one guy reading a prepared statement, and then he kind of, I don't know, then there was somebody else who made sort of ad hoc statements. I don't know if we should just tweak that a little bit to, as they began to read a prepared statement, I mean, one person read a prepared statement, but other people
And then
jumped
another
in.
woman, right,
Yeah. Right.
identified herself, and she started to say something.
I don't have edits, I didn't prepare edits, but that might be something. And then the last thing, at the end of that paragraph, the board placed them in the virtual waiting room, but didn't we make a decision that, did we just move them to the virtual waiting room? Okay, all right. And those are my comments.
They're
On,
being disruptive.
Yes, I think that should be put.
You should probably add that, yeah, I agree.
add the word disruptive.
So maybe take a
The
edit.
disruptive.
The
Right.
people that were disruptive, yeah. Just a clarification on page 5 of the minutes, the second full paragraph. I didn't quite understand. This is talking about the Bog House, and the first sentence says, how the cost is currently or might be offset by in-kind work of the tenants or rent, as in the cost of the repairs? Is that what that's referring to?
Yes.
Okay, might just be worth putting that in there, so it's the cost of the repairs,
See,
The
you're,
cost is currently,
what page, I'm sorry.
it's the first sentence of the second paragraph on
The
page
repairs would have
5.
direct Residents.
Currently or might be offset.
No, not the first sentence.
Yeah, of the second paragraph.
Oh, of the second paragraph.
Yeah,
the
the
cost
board
of
further
Further discuss
discussed
how the cost of repairs, okay.
Yeah,
is currently
Or
or might be offset by the tenants doing in-kind work or us charging them rent? Is that what that's?
the board further discuss how the cost is currently or might be offset by in-kind work of the tenants or, yes, by rent paid by them. Yeah.
Which they don't presently pay rent, right?
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
thing. We actually say that?
Forgotten. They have are they tenants at will, or is there a lease?
This is the mess.
Yeah, that's the mess, right.
And I would say they're tenants at will.
At our will. Or somebody's will, Conscom. Conscom's will, yeah, right.
And then are we done with that one thing?
Are you recommending a wordsmithing?
Well, just that, or.
Just clarify that it's for repairs.
Clarified, yeah. And then the paragraph below that says, it's about the repairs
Yeah.
on the bog house.
Can I suggest that people send their
Send something specific, okay.
to Gretchen, and we'll
Okay.
take these up at our next meeting.
Great, I like that.
It's late,
Okay.
and
All right,
we have
all right,
some
sorry.
still other things.
Yeah,
That's-
no
It's
problem.
okay, it's just,
Yeah.
you know, I had a couple of little
till
things,
today,
but
so, Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, liaison reports. So, I was at planning board last night. They have now officially set up 2 new committees. One is the MBTA committee, and another was MVP. They wanted a member from select board, and I had originally, when it was still a working group, had volunteered for it, but they wanted to have confirmation that you still supported me being the select board representative, and I would invite anybody who would like to be on it to take my place. But I'm still happy to do the job if that's what you wish.
Is this both committees?
Yeah, I
You
would
would
say
be
for both
serving
committees,
on both.
yeah.
You're a fine American,
I'm
Kate.
very comfortable with you serving, as long as you're willing to continue.
Travis?
Yep.
Okay,
All good.
all
Yep.
right.
I chaired the first town meeting
Oh, yes.
planning committee, I don't know what it's called.
Study committee.
Study committee. And it was good. We had a great session. We had a 2-hour session full of ideas, lots of really interesting ideas. We had 1 or 2 people virtually, and everybody else was here. We are planning to meet approximately every other Thursday until town meeting. And we have already picked out a couple things to focus on that we might actually, be able to, with Wayne's help, be able to do at town meeting. And then really through the summer would be the hard work of the more difficult things that we would trial at the fall town meeting, because that's a smaller, easier meeting that maybe we can actually enact in the Springtown meeting of 25. But there was a lot of energy, a lot of good ideas, so, I'm pretty encouraged.
Were they all engaged? Like, tell me about the dynamic, because I was hoping we're going to get new ideas and new.
I think we did. And one of them, I don't want to rattle on here right now, but one of the things is, we're focusing a lot on who doesn't come to town meeting, like how do we get these people? But we don't do enough to celebrate those who do come. And one of the ideas is like, like the Mosquito publishes everybody who gives money. Like, we'll put a list, everybody who showed up to town meeting, like, put it in. Like, people should be, we want to, well, it is sort of public shaming, and it's also recognition, and it, but there was a lot more about, ways to reach out to, the other pools. And we have 2 people who are younger and have maybe, parents of school-age children and stuff. So that's good, getting that kind of opinion. So, the first day was organizational and just like a lot of free flow, but it was a lot of energy, good ideas. So as we, winnow them down, I think I feel like we can come up with some things, so.
Now, are you going to continue as chair?
Reluctantly, yes.
Okay.
So I was also at the library trustees today, and I want to make sure everybody knows that on Friday, there's the adult spelling bee.
Okay.
And I'm going to be one of the judges, and I want it to be known that I am open to bribes.
In other words, you would deem something incorrectly spelled as correctly spelled?
If you pay me enough. And I just wanted everybody to know that all proceeds that I would receive from such bribes.
Is receive IE or EI, Judge?
I before E, except after C.
Would go to the library, so there you are.
Oh gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, well.
Sorry. That's okay.
Okay.
Any other liaison reports? Community input? There's nobody in the room. Christina
Or Mark.
or Mark,
Oh, good for you, Mark.
even Mary Lynn. Oh, that's okay. That's good. Yeah,
He's still here. Look at that.
that's why I made
You got an A for effort.
I just want to know if I can quote you on that, Kate,
absolutely.
about taking bribes. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
That all proceeds go to the.
but just so that, but also let them know that all the proceeds from the bribes are going to the library.
Absolutely.
Not very impartial judging, but.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
No, serious, she's not going to use it to do her next decal on her car.
Okay.
MTA?
What?
Motion
Time
to
to-
adjourn?
Oh.
Oh my God.
No, a new topic, please.
I just have the same reactions.
Yes.
Yes.
So moved.
So moved.
Second? Yep. All right, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you all.
All right.
All right.